So how do you protect yourself from this? It's easy to diversify your content. I even talk about it in my ebook. It's not as easy to diversify your social circles and diversify the industries that you participate in. This is why if you are building yourself up to be a full-time streamer, yes, it's great to pursue a career that you're passionate about, but also don't lose sight of all of the other relationships and hobbies that you enjoy outside of streaming. It is so easy whenever you are trying to build up a career in this industry to let other things slide because you want your passion to take priority and you have such a fire for wanting to do this thing full time. But long term, it does nothing but hurt you and you don't want to be in that position. Another reason full-time streaming can be problematic is because it is fickle, y'all. It is so fickle. It changes constantly. New things are always coming out. New people are always coming in. Features change. Everything is always changing. Imagine if something changed at your job that would affect your paycheck almost constantly. At first glance, this doesn't seem like a bad thing, right? Like, it's great to have variety in our lives, and it's really interesting to have a career that keeps throwing different things at you. But whenever you're romanticizing full-time streaming, you often don't think about it from the perspective of having to constantly keep up with these changes. You feel like once you become full-time, it's always going to be as easy as it was for you whenever you were put into a position where you could be full-time. And so someday, after 2 months or 6 months or 2 years of being a full-time streamer, circumstances get difficult and you can't pay the bills anymore for whatever reason. A feature on the platform changed, or maybe your content isn't as relevant anymore, or maybe something happened to someone in your community that caused a lot of negativity for everyone else. Whatever it is, you might be in a situation where you can't be a full-time streamer anymore because of how fickle the industry is. And you can offset a lot of this by learning about things like branding and marketing and all those other sexy buzzwords that I talk about in every single freaking video. But it also doesn't necessarily guarantee that you are going to be able to find the solutions to all of the problems that come up throughout your career as a full-time streamer. I have a workbook that is completely free if you want to look a little bit more into the different routes that your brand could possibly take if that's something that you're struggling with. So we've talked about mental health in this video, but can we talk about what it's like to have a full-time job where the effort that you put in does not equate to results? Imagine if you go to your 9-to-5 job and you start putting in so much more.
Oye, genial, ¿eh?
Right? You start cleaning up every single day and you do your job and you do half of somebody else's job and you're always in contact and communication with your managers. And you never get any acknowledgement for it. That's what a lot of small streamers are going through. And that doesn't change just because you go full-time. Full-time is not this thing that is automatically going to make you a worthier streamer, make other people take you more seriously.
Oh shit.
I think that it would. I thought if I went full-time, that more people would be interested in watching me because all of a sudden I was more important than everybody else who wasn't full-time. And that's just not how it works. Your full-time or part-time status alone doesn't change the actual quality of your stream. Now, because the amount of effort that you put into your stream does not necessarily equate to growth and results, this leads to a high burnout potential, high frustration potential, high potential of being jaded, which can happen in any industry. Every single job has its problems, but definitely in streaming, this is the case. I hit my camera, I'm sorry. So there are so many small streamers who start with the idea of going full time someday.
Bueno,
What's happening is they're consistent for a very long time, but their effort doesn't equate to results, and so they end up getting frustrated, which I kind of have a YouTube video over that as well. And then they get into a really negative mental health space, and then they end up stopping streaming altogether, or at least taking a major step back to try and just readjust their vision of the entire industry. And that sucks. We don't want awesome people leaving the industry because they feel like they don't matter. So we've talked a lot about emotions, but I also promised you strategy. Like, why is being a full-time streamer not strategically smart?
Hola.
Streamer usually comes with accepting a full-time streamer schedule, which for a lot of people is
Sí, no manches.
6 to 8 hours a day, 5 to 6 hours a week. The reason it isn't smart is because it doesn't give you enough time to focus on other projects and other content.
Uno menos.
This means YouTube channels, social media, and also those bigger projects that you release a couple of times every year that keep the buzz ignited and help you bring your brand to the next level. For streamers who are already massive and successful, they can stream a ton because they have a team of people helping them create tons of other things and up-level themselves and work with companies because those companies are reaching out to them. But for people who are aspiring to be full-time, who are smaller, you're not in the position where streaming constantly is going to benefit you. That's period. Yeah, Dunskies with that sentence. Dunskies?
Uh-oh.
Those really
Necesito comida.
that you think
Mueran.
amazing full-time
Vacas.
streamers, they're not really just full-time streamers. They're not only streaming. They're on tons of other platforms and they have other projects that they're working on. Ninja has a freaking underwear line. Like, I will say though, if your goal is to be a full-time streamer only, you don't believe in the power of YouTube or social media, you don't want to do all of these outside projects, you just want to play freaking video games and get paid for it as your job, that goal is still perfectly valid. Maybe it isn't the most emotionally healthy goal, according to me, and maybe it isn't the most strategic way for you to grow yourself in the streaming industry, but not everything has to be about strategy, right? Sometimes we just want to do things because they're best for our personal joy and fulfillment. Just because full-time streaming might not be the most mentally healthy according to some stream coach on YouTube doesn't mean that it's not the right choice for you. But allowing small streamers to romanticize Twitch to the point where they don't consider all of the negatives and realities that come along with being a full-time streamer, I mean, that would be irresponsible of me. I'm not gonna put that responsibility on any of y'all, but I can't go around letting y'all think that it is just rainbows all the time, because it isn't. In fact, it might be the right choice for you to stay a small streamer forever. That might actually be what is more fulfilling for you, it feels better for you, and according to a lot of the comments in this video, a lot of people agree with that. So you might check out that one if you're feeling like you are in that position. I'll see you over there. Bye. I love you.
It's good to be back on the air.
Or do I?
Dead Speaks in the studio. I thought I was dead.
Ooh.
Anyone that doesn't know, and I'm actually not going to be. I've talked about this stuff a lot, where I don't want to be the resource that you guys come to when it comes to drama. In fact, I do not want to be associated with any of it. I don't want my opinions on what's going on out there. Know that for people that have been victimized in situations, my condolences and wishes are completely with the people that have had shit happen to them in any situation, because I have lived a life where I've been around people that have been on the receiving end of shit like that, you know, throughout my life. And I've been a person that has had to, fortunately, not be on the receiving end of all the bullshit that's going on right now throughout my life. But I have been around friends and, you know, family and others that have gone through shit like this, and to know what they're going through and to sympathize with them. So, I did put out a tweet earlier today, and the thing I hate about Twitter is that Twitter can make it seem very selfish. You gotta realize that Twitter is something that The platform is not designed for this shit, but it is the platform for information now. To make it seem like what I was talking about was selfish in regards to what's going on with Evo. And like I said, I'm not a person that likes to comment on drama.
What?
And I will absolutely back off in any other situation. This is a bit different because Evo is not just a tournament that I've, enjoyed going through for about 14 years now. It's not just this cool event that all my friends go to. This is something that I have actively participated in and have been responsible for a portion of its growth over the past 7+ years at least. For at least 5, 6 years or so, I was absolutely a passive enthusiast where I was just attending Evo, being a competitor, taking Jessica there and my friends, and just being a part of the, biggest tournament in the world. But for the past 6, 7 years, as a person that has a reach that goes beyond just more than my friends anymore, that goes beyond just more than what I'm personally responsible for, I've encouraged and tried to make people go to this event to make it bigger, make it more important, to make it, to make fighting games something bigger, just in general. Like I said, there's a lot of other stuff going on right now, between what's going on with streamers and what's going on with Smash and its community. I just don't have any connection or personal investment in it, so I don't feel like it's my place to provide opinion or any of my intellect, because I just don't have any of it. However, when it comes to what's going on today with Evo, I do. I mean, I've been, once a year, I work alongside a lot of these people that are the direct organizers and the countless amount of people that put on this show every single year, that put on this worldwide event.
Tengo una idea, de hecho.
Different, and I feel like I'm a little bit more responsible
Aunque va a tener que
in terms of
hacerse
what's going
ahorita.
on towards the future and my thoughts of it. And even though I wasn't even going this year, right? Like, Evo this year was technically canceled, right? Because of COVID, obviously. Online Evo was the return of Killer Instinct. And I had already plans with the organizers of the event, and I hadn't even announced it, to commentate Killer Instinct Finals, which I was really looking forward to. I know I was probably going to be commentating alongside Sagem, and Steve had been... I had never commentated KI Finals with Steve. Every single year I did it. I think he was really looking forward to it as well. But,
No, va a tener que ser después.
just not... If any of these situations, like any happiness that could come to us, like, I feel like we're responsible for people watching or the people that are following what I do to understand. And I'm in a very weird situation where, because I'm sort of responsible in a way for Evo and the people...
Soy yo algo feo.
and even the changes that are maybe coming from this point forward. Or
Oh, no!
I'm really trying to be very specific with what I'm saying, because I don't want to get construed of what Evo is. And
Okay.
long story short, for a long time, Evo was run by an administration of only about a few people between the Cannons, which is Tom and Tony. And these guys you might recognize, they're making the League of Legends fighting game. Also responsible for GTPO. And Joey, who's been the larger tournament organizer for the majority, for quite a few years now. I've talked to these guys like once a year, and in passing, and I've been to like all the big Evo areas, all the
Okay.
top, what's it called, privileges you can possibly have at Evo that I usually pass on, except going up to, you know, the box booths during the finals and communicating and talking to all the creators like Harada and creators of Guilty Gear, and talking with those guys and seeing them, and it's amazing, right? It's everything I wanted, just to communicate to them what we love about their fighting games, and, you know, the people that are directly responsible for the creation of this stuff, because that's all Evo is. It's a big Merry Christmas celebration of fighting games in one spot. Long story short, Joey was revealed through not just one person's account, and this is the reason I made the tweet as I did, before everyone was like, oh, well, are we not holding this person accountable through, like, evidence? Are you making assumptions? Do we let the investigation keep going? I was getting a lot of, like,
Ya se va.
A lot of people immediately assuming that we should give this guy a chance because this could be bullshit. However, I had spent the last entire day looking up and trying my best to understand what exactly was going on behind the scenes to find that it's not just one person. These are multiple accounts. This is a thing that many people have known things about for a while. In an arcade scene that I was not a part of, so I don't know anything about this. The accounts of it happening are from like 20 years ago that include people that are underage and a ton of... I don't want to talk about it. Long story short, one of the organizers of EVO, one of the guys that's like in charge, is directly responsible for that. The problem I have is that, and he came out and later admitted it, right? He actually said and apologized for it and had an apology, that he's been changing over 20 years. The problem with that is that until you're held accountable, it's hard to imagine someone changing, you know? Until like you're directly in the line of responsibility for a situation, like you don't know what people are still doing for however much time. The thing that really starts to hit me personally hard is when I start to think of the things that I did for EVO as an organization, for his personal financial gain towards these events over the past like 7 years, as we've hosted the biggest panels that EVO's had all these years. We had the biggest panels at EVO. We had so many people in those rooms packing it to the brim that we had to kick people out. I've had thousands, like literally.
What do you have to trade?
I wish I wish I was making up numbers, but I've literally had thousands of people at EVO come up to me and say, I would never be into fighting games if it wasn't for you. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. This is so incredibly cool. I'm so glad you exposed me to this. And my stupid brain starts tying the knot that me introducing all these people is essentially filling the pockets of somebody that is abusive potentially towards its community or has been abusive towards its community. It's a weird thing that I have to sort of juggle.
Sure.
I know, and I know it's not on me. I know it's not on me. I don't want to make this about me. This is just the way my stupid brain works, right? And I've actually found personally other ways to sort of describe it as I'm trying to like rationalize what's going on in my head. EVO isn't about one individual, right? EVO will change. It's going to happen, right? It's going to be run by different people. The change has already actually taken place. I've already spoken to the people that are responsible for EVO. Change has already taken place because Joey, Mr. Wizard, is no longer technically running the show. It's the situation chat where I've talked about it for years, where a lot of these like charitable organizations I've had issues with contributing money to, because sometimes you do not know where the money is going. Sometimes you don't know if it's lining up, if it's actually going to the specific aid, how much of it is going to aid, and things like that. And it takes research to figure out if charitable organizations are doing the right thing with your money, because I've had issues in the past with that. Like my family.
There we go.
Putting things towards these organizations and finding out they're doing something completely different with it. That's why usually when it came to charities or fundraisers or anything of the like, I do it for individuals because you know that person. You can see that person. You can see the distress that has affected themselves, their family, the situation they're in, and you have the ability to make an impact with that person. And that's usually why in the past when we've done charitable events like FGC,
okay.
I kind of prefer doing it for individuals and moments of need. This sort of ties into this situation because it feels like throughout this situation, throughout these years, I'm like sort of second guessing myself. Were we unknowingly sort of allowing this person to continue this behavior? I don't know. I'm not going to accuse these people of doing these things or not, of what accounts haven't happened. All we have accounts is that what did happen before. But I don't know. Like, that's the thing, I don't know. All I can say is that my biggest sympathies right now are absolutely towards the people that are on the receiving end of abuse, and also the people that are on the receiving end at EVO. The people that are at EVO that work their ass off every single year to put on a show, to put on an event like this. While there is one person that is essentially signing the checks and making the deals, there is countless hundreds upon hundreds of people that are working their ass off every single EVO to make the show great for people that are there. And I was fucking one of them. I've had to sacrifice my need to be a competitor for greater length of making that experience better for others by offering things to happen at EVO. For anyone that's immediately like, I know I'm already gonna get a lot of people talking like, well, I was paid to do that shit. I never got paid to do any of this stuff. The only time I've ever been paid for EVO was to do commentary. When it came to hosting the events at EVO, like the official events, we were actually a part of the official panel listing for doing meet and greets and signings and all this stuff. I never fucking asked for compensation for any of this stuff. I only did it because people would give us space to do it, so I felt like that was enough. Every single year I go to EVO, it costs me about $5,000 to $10,000. Because we make a bunch of stuff that we never usually sell at EVO. I think last year or the year before we sold Benny plushies, and that was about it, because I had a lot of Benny plushies, but the previous year I decided not to sell them, we just gave them away. EVO is largely very expensive for me, but to me it was always worth it because they were essentially giving me the venue, right? They were allowing me to be there for our audience, for anyone that wanted to see us or talk to us. They were giving us a platform, yeah. And EVO's always a stressful time of year because we have to get all that shit ready, and it's fucking tough. But really, when it boils down, like, I've been in the trenches of EVO trying to get shit done most of those days, and the only day I have off is finals day, and I just go to the top of the stadium and just hide in the darkness with my friends and just watch everything. I really sympathize with the people that work their ass off. The people that run the booths, the people that are behind the guys like Spooky, guys like the Tenno crew. All those dudes. It's a funny thing when I talk about going to EVO, those are the guys I like hanging out with the most. It's not the players. It's actually not the top competitors, even though I like seeing those guys and saying hi to them and having Daigo fucking walk up to me and recognize who I am. Or Tokido, like, that blows my mind, considering these were the people that got me into competitive fighting games back in the early 2000s. That's incredible. But funny enough, like, those aren't the people that I usually like hanging out with. I like hanging out with the people that make the fighting games, whether it's the creators of Street Fighter 2 or the guys that are developing, you know, King of Fighters or any of those guys, and just celebrating the games that they've made over the years, or hanging out with the crew behind the scenes. Like, those are the moments that I find really valuable, is hanging out with the people that actually make EVO, people that create shit every single year to make this stuff happen. And I feel really bad for them, like I do. Monzo Gonzo and Seg and all those guys, like, I can only imagine what the fuck they're going through right now. Yeah, Markman too. So the good news is, as a result of all of this, things are already changing. Positions have flipped. Wizard's not the CEO of EVO anymore. And this will happen within like 12 hours. He's not the head of EVO anymore. In fact, it's actually flipped to either, was it Tom or Tony? It was Tony. This is good. The fact that things changed as fast as they did, well, this came as like a precursor. Like, all the commentators were gone. All the people that were hosting demonstrations or exhibitions or anything like that all pulled out. Everybody pulled out, and then Capcom pulled out, and then Mortal Kombat pulled out, and then Fighting Herds pulled out, and then eventually it seemed like, Skullgirls and most likely Killer Instinct were also going to pull out as well. Bandai Namco pulled out, so Tekken's out in any way. And before even those other companies could, EVO pretty much announced we're canceled. This is it, and we're making a significant change. EVO's responsible for like some of the most incredible moments of my life. Like, we're talking about an event where I have actively dreamed of being on like the stage, or was like a big goal of mine for a hell of a long time, being on stage and, you know, being a top competitor like many people. I got my wish in the form of a Canon Award, which was honestly one of the craziest moments of my entire life. All I can say is that this is good. I'm happy that they're doing this, but I do think that EVO needs a rebranding in some way. I do think EVO needs to be restructured away from anything that we've had before. This is a change that happened really fast, and I know it's not going to be easy because the things that went behind the scenes, like to actually make EVO happen, was the responsibility of the person that was causing issues in the past. But I've spoken many times, I've spoken more times to Tom and Tony than I have to Joey in the past. Tom and Tony feel like they genuinely give a shit. They care about the community. They want to support it. Guys, they need fucking rollback netcode, or crying out loud, or the implementation of rollback netcode in fighting games. Yeah, so I mean, I'd like to say I trust what they're doing going forward, but there needs to be like a restructuring, especially after all the stories of what has happened at EVO in other communities that I don't even want to talk about because I don't want to. I mean, it's good to talk about it, but it's not my place to talk about it. There's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of weird abuse and harassment and stuff of the like. Speculative, no, all these things are coming from accounts that I know, and a lot of those accounts have come forward. It's hard. This is hard to shitty situation. The thing is, it's necessary, right? We're talking like it's a super shitty situation, but this is absolutely necessary. These things need to happen. What a shitty, necessary fucking day. It's been tough. All I can say, chat, and I'm gonna mention this as well, just because it's a thing that I've been preaching for a long time. The FGC is much bigger than top player. Your fighting game community, or the community of people that have grown to love the same thing around you for years, or if you're cultivating rivalries or friendships through fighting games, goes a lot deeper than the stream numbers you see during a top 8 or how well someone's performing. Usually the judgment of character in the fighting game community is based on how good you'll be doing in a 1st to 10. And it's been that way for a very long time. How much do you actually win? Have you made it to top 8? Who are you to do something unless you're actually good at the game? And I think that judgment of character is extremely fucked up. And I saw somebody else in a different community talking about what's going on, but when it boils down, the people that are representing their game or their region for top 8 is absolutely the focus of the attention when it comes to these big events. They're the ones on screen, so you think that they're the most important. But I'm telling you, it's definitely not the case. The thing that's the most important when it comes to EVO, the thing that's the most important when it comes to fighting game community events, is the audience watching. How many people are invested live? How many people are invested at home to potentially go to these events? The individual communities themselves are what's important. I'm not trying to take away attention from the fact that, you know, weird shit has happened at EVO, or that people are illegitimized for what happened at EVO. I'm not trying to say that. All I'm saying is that if you're feeling like shit right now, as a viewer or an outsider or somebody that has a community of people that you go to EVO, or you're feeling bad that you went to EVO, all I can say is that the celebration of those things that seem like they're important isn't really what's important. It's not. The things that are important are the people that you meet at your community, the people that you know and you trust, the people that are nice to you, the people that are nice to others, right? The celebration of what you guys love. This shit is literally the whole point of my stream. It was the whole reason I started streaming, was that I wanted to emulate the arcade environment, video games especially. I wanted to emulate the arcade environment at home so that people on the receiving end that are watching can feel like what it feels like to come to one spot every single week and have their own fighting game community. And that was the thing that I always wanted, right? Whether it's video games or those bunch of buddies that you met every single week or 2 weeks, in high school or college, a crew of people that you just frequently liked going back and you knew that they would be there and you're seeing them. That's the feeling. That is fucking fighting game community. It is. Because you're all surrounding around the game you love to play, sharing information about that game, the reasons why you love it, and you're celebrating that constantly. And that's the goal of my stream, and that's going to be the goal moving forward. Whether or not Evo gets rebranded or turned into something else, I would like to say that if Evo makes changes in the future to rebrand themselves and disassociate the organization as much as possible from what it was before, and actually make something for change, like try their best for change, then I'll be happy to be a part of that. An organization that wants to share the things we love about each other instead of all the fucked up shit that's going on right now. And to be honest, chat, I have largely disassociated myself from the larger fighting game community for like 4 years now. For quite a while. And I've had to. It's been one of the hardest things that I've had to do ever, but I've had to. I've had to watch things from the outside and have very minimal participation. So we try to create our own community. The whole point is that I'm completely willing and ready for people to be exposed to fighting games through my streams or YouTube videos, and I'll be glad to support
That's a screamer.
whatever the heck comes from Evo in the future if they are going about the change that they're talking about. Because I trust the canons. I do. They genuinely seem like good people.
Okay.
Interested in the well-being of the community. So, yeah.
So EVO 2020 has been canceled, and one of the biggest reasons is absolutely horrifying, and it enrages me. Let's get into it. So EVO 2020 was supposed to take place July 31st to August 2nd, 2020. Obviously, due to the pandemic that's going on, it wasn't going to be in physical form. It was going to be online. But due to allegations against the president or former president of EVO, it's been canceled. There's also other fighters that have had allegations against them. But the president of EVO, Joey Coulier, has actually had predatory accusations made against him, that things that he did to kids in the mid to late 90s, and he has confirmed that they have happened. So it's not allegations anymore. He said, yeah, I did terrible things 20 years ago, and yeah, I gotta own up to him. Well, first off, EVO a couple days ago posted a statement on Twitter, and this is what it had to say. Over the past 24 hours, in response to serious allegations recently made public on Twitter, we have made the first of a series of important decisions regarding the future of our company. Effective immediately, Joey Coulier will no longer be involved with EVO in any capacity. We are currently working towards his complete separation from the company and have relieved him of all of his responsibilities. Going forward, Tony Cannon will act as CEO in this position. He will take a leadership role in prioritizing greater accountability across EVO, both internally and at our events. Progress doesn't happen overnight, or without the bravery of those who speak up against misconduct and injustice. We are shocked and saddened by these events, but we are listening and committed to making every change that will be necessary in making EVO a better model for the stronger, safer culture we all seek. As a result, we will be canceling EVO Online and will work to issue refunds for all players who chose to purchase a badge. We will donate the equivalent of the proceeds as promised to Project Hope. Now, a Twitter user, if I'm saying his name wrong, who goes by Pyronal Carry, or also known as Mikey, he made a statement. I'm not going to reiterate any of it here. It's horrifying what Joey Coulier did to this poor guy when he was a kid. It happened, like I said, in the 90s. It'll make your skin crawl. I'm not even going to leave a link to it in the description. It'll take you 5 seconds to find it. You can go to GameSpot.com, and I almost recommend not reading it because it's stomach-turning what this guy did. And he released a statement talking about it. And yeah. Anyway, this is what Joey Coulier has to say. I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt anyone. I was young and reckless and did things I'm not proud of. I have been growing and maturing over the past 20 years, but that doesn't excuse anything. All I have been trying to do is become a better person. Once again, I'm truly sorry. Joey, I've done dumbass things when I was younger. I've talked about this in other videos, and even like from my early 30s to now, I'm 38 now. You know, my thought process back then was, I would be like, man, 31-year-old Rich was a dumbass Rich. But never in my stupidest young adult times did I go, you know, let me do something inappropriate with a child. What the hell is wrong with you, man? And like I saw Alpha Omega Sin in the comments of Joey Coulier's statement. He's like, you're only sorry that you got caught. That someone came forward and called you out. That's the only reason that you're sorry. You know how much you ruined kids' lives by what you did? There's look, again, against cancel culture, but these kind of allegations are exceptions. And it's not even an allegation anymore. Joey's like, yeah, I did it. I did it. I was young and reckless, so that was my reasoning for ruining kids' lives. This is why, whether it's a man or a woman that comes forward with an accusation, doesn't matter if they say it happened yesterday, or it happened 2 years ago, or 20 years ago, you have to take it seriously. You have to take it seriously, because the vast majority, again, I know the dude bros don't want to hear it, but the vast majority of people, it's tough to come forward. It's tough to come forward. It's a very, especially when it's someone of prominence too. The president and co-founder of Evo. It's like, oh man, I'm going to have to deal with backlash because of this. And it's a risk to come forward. So virtually the vast majority of people that come forward accusing people of things as dangerous and as horrific as this are coming forward, and they're being truthful. The only thing I ask is that there is a case first, or if the person that's being accused says, if they come out and say, yeah, I did it. That's what I ask for. I ask for due process. But I don't think that people, if they feel that they have been assaulted, should not come forward. And I see people, when I made the video with Angry Joe, belittling his accuser, and I'm like, look, you don't know Angry Joe and you don't know this woman. All I'm asking for is let there be due process. Do not belittle anyone who comes forward with these accusations, because a lot of times, as you're seeing here, they're true. And for the handful of times, yes, there is exceptions, and they even proved it with an article, that they aren't true. Those are the exception, not the rule. The rule is most people, virtually all people, or the vast majority, let me say that again, who come forward are telling the truth. And here is an example of that. This is disgusting what he did, and I'm all about giving people second chances, but when it comes to kids, no. Because why do you think that people have to register for the rest of their life as an offender? Why do you think that is? Because there's something in your head that it just doesn't go away. And I would never trust this guy around my kids, ever. And like I said, he's only coming forward because he got caught, because he got called out. Unreal. You have to, man, if you're a parent like me, protect your kids, watch what they're doing, watch where they're around, because you never know who is truly a monster behind the scenes. This is Richard, Review Tech USA, signing out. Have a good one. Hey, if you enjoy my content, consider becoming a Review Tech USA member. I'll have a link below in the description. I live stream now on this channel all the time, and it gives you access to cool emoticons to use as well while I live stream. Again, link below in the description. Thank you for your continued support.
The fighting game community has completely imploded over the past few days. There have been a lot of different things going on with companies and individuals. A lot of different accusations have been made against people in the fighting game community. But we're going to focus on the situation with Evo and Joey Mr. Wizard Kueller in this video. But I do know there has been a lot of situations, and especially the situation regarding Senpai, who used to go by Cinnamon, and Puppet, who has come forward accusing her of having a sexual relationship with him when she was 24 and he was 14. Now, there is some video evidence to back that up along with his statements, but through all of this, especially the situation with Mr. Wizard, we are seeing the collapse of a long-standing, previously respected organization, and I honestly don't know if Evo will be able to come back from this. Mr. Wizard may be just one person, but this situation has completely killed off Evo for this year and possibly years to come. So, EVO Online has been cancelled following allegations of sexual misconduct against its president. Capcom, NetherRealms, Bandai Namco, and high-profile players, including Sonic Fox, have all withdrawn from the tournament. In the wake of allegations of sexual misconduct against EVO's co-founder and president, Joey Mr. Wizard Kueller, the fighting games tournament's next event has been cancelled, and he has been removed from his position. So if you don't know who he is, Mr. Wizard was the person who started the core values slogan in the fighting game community a couple years back. You had sexy girls up on stage at EVO jiggling their breasts for a Dead or Alive advertisement, and he said that them doing that didn't reflect EVO or the fighting game's core values, so hashtag core values. The allegations about Kueller were made this morning in a post shared by longtime fighting game player Mikey Pham, who made both general and specific claims, including one that took place when he was a minor, and I do want to note that he was saying this happened almost 20 years ago. I am not going to read through the whole post, but I do want to read specific parts of the allegations, which I think are the most important, because this is a pretty long post, but it will be linked in the pinned comment if you want to read it all for yourself. So, let's take a step back from here. I was born in '83. I was the baby of this friend group. Everyone was like 5 to 10 years older than me, and I looked up to every single one of them. And I would try to join in and be part of the boys' talk about sex and women and all of that. It wasn't hazing, but a lot of the older boys' club would often have us do stupid shit for a laugh. And they'd give us tokens or buy us food if we'd be willing to do whatever stupid thing it was. Most of it was genuinely harmless, like screaming something dumb really loud, shit along those lines. Mr. Wizard was especially into this. He would pay people hundreds of tokens to do things like take off their clothes and jump into the water hazard pools for certain amounts of time. 99% of the time, it was young boys. There is only a singular instance I know of where it wasn't a young boy. In that singular instance, she was allowed to do it in the future in whatever clothes she liked and only for a few seconds. But for all of the boys, out of recollection 12 to 16, it was like 10 to 15 minutes. We had to be in our underwear under the reasoning that it would be colder, and there were always challenges at the time, so we couldn't prepare changes of clothes, towels, or anything like that. We were teenagers with no money, and 100 to 200 tokens, $20 to $40 worth of tokens was a lot. So almost all of us did it without a second thought. Jump in a pool for 10 minutes for $40? Hell yeah. We never really thought of it in a predatory way. From here, though, I have to jump into a side story to jump into the context of this. At SHGL, the male bathroom had a stall, and directly next to the stall was a urinal. Someone drilled a peephole into the stall so that while sitting in the stall, they could see people using the urinal, and workers found it and put a screw into the hole. During a group conversation, late August or early September 2001, someone asked about the screw, and one of the workers explained that. In the group, someone made a joke about how it's mostly Asian people, even if you were gay. Why would you want to look at a bunch of tiny penises? And me, being who I am,
Okay.
Who love to research into things that are common myths and ideas, said that that's not true. Asians on average are as big as other races when erect. The average male penis is 5 1/4 inches when erect. Again, if you knew me back then, this is 100% on brand for me to say, even though I was only 17. So Wizard took a stab by saying, so you're saying you're average? And I proclaimed back, I'm above average. Wizard said, I bet you're not. I bet you $20 that you're not. So the bet was made. He later made stipulations that he'd have to see it in person, and then he does go on to say that he bought a bunch of pornography to bring back to SHGL, went into the bathroom stall, while he waited outside of the bathroom stall for me to call him in. It wasn't an easy task to get erect, and when I did, I took out the ruler, unlocked the stall door, and he says that he did show Mr. Wizard his penis, and Mr. Wizard gave him $20 to see his penis. So those are the main accusations, is that he very regularly, it sounds like, asked younger boys to jump into the pool for like $20 to $40 worth of tokens for the arcade, and he also paid this man to see his penis, like to measure his penis for $20. Fam is the only source of the allegations so far, though 2011 EVO champ Jay Vincent Snyder said in a now deleted tweet that Fam had related the story to him at some point in the past. I'm not sure why he deleted his tweet. He has not made any other tweets since that one that he deleted. Little bit suspicious, but he might just not want to be a part of it right now. Evo moved quickly to address the allegations, saying in a tweet that Kuehler had been placed on administrative leave, pending a third-party investigation. But despite that, several hours after the allegations were made, multi-time Evo champion Sonic Fox announced that they were dropping out of the tournament. So it sounds like Evo really wanted to damage control as quickly as possible, because Evo was supposed to start on July 4th, which at the time of recording this is tomorrow. They were supposed to start doing their month-long worth of events. So they were trying to damage control so that companies wouldn't back out last minute, but unfortunately for them, it did not work out that way. Sonic Fox was the first to drop out. Also, I won't be participating at any longer in EVO events. And then, several dozen other players and casters followed Sonic Fox's lead by pulling out of the tournament, esports commentator Rod Breslow said on Twitter. Capcom, NetherRealm, and Bandai Namco all confirmed separately that they were withdrawing as well. Companies wanted to stay as far away from this as they could, even though EVO did respond pretty quickly, saying that they were going to get an investigation done, and he had been put on administrative leave. The EVO brand as a whole right now is completely damaged. Their reputation is completely damaged, so these companies want to stay as far away as possible. Capcom was the first company to come out and announce that they were dropping their support this year, in light of the recent accusations of misconduct made against EVO organizer Joey Kuehler. Capcom will no longer be participating in EVO 2020. Out of respect for those who have been affected and to the current investigation, we felt this was the appropriate course of action, and we apologize to the players and fans who were looking forward to these tournaments. Then you had NetherRealm. We stand in solidarity for those who have spoken out against abuse. We will be pulling Mortal Kombat 11 from EVO Online. And then you had Bandai Namco Esports make a post saying Bandai Namco Entertainment America Incorporated has decided to end our participation in EVO 2020 in response to recent abuse allegations. We stand in solidarity with the individuals who have spoken out against abuse within the fighting game community, and thank our fans for their continued support. So as you can see, they all acted very quickly. They all said the generalized same statement because they don't want to be affiliated with EVO right now. The article continues, though, with faced with collapsing support. Organizers pulled the plug on the entire tournament, which was to be held over a month-long series of online events beginning on July 4th. So, these accusations had come out
There are
3
way
days
too many Zed
before
infestations out
EVO
there.
2020 was supposed to be held online. And keep in mind, they already had a lot of problems due to the coronavirus. They had to cancel their physical tournaments, their physical event, and put it to online only. And now they're not doing it at all. And then they later announced that they were completely cutting ties with Mr. Wizard. But after all of these companies had come out and made their statements saying that they did not want to be affiliated with EVO, Mr. Wizard had actually made a statement on the situation, which doesn't make him look any more innocent and doesn't make him look any more good in the eyes of the public. He said, "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt anyone. I was young and reckless and did things I am not proud of. I have been growing and maturing over the past 20 years, but that does not excuse anything. All I have been trying to do is become a better person. And once again, I'm truly sorry."
Looks like a Zed-free
So
zone.
after he had made this statement, EVO had actually come out and they had said that they were completely cutting ties with him. Effective immediately, Joey Kuehler will no longer be involved with EVO in any capacity. We are currently working towards his complete separation from the company and have relieved him of all of his responsibilities. Going forward, Tony Cannon will act as CEO. Progress does not happen overnight or without the bravery of those who speak up against misconduct and injustice. We are shocked and saddened by these events, but we are listening and committed to making changes every single day that will be necessary in making EVO a better model for the stronger, safer culture we all seek. Now, this isn't really a case of cancel culture. He apologized for doing these things, and he is not openly denying them. He can't be left in a position of power after all of the things that he's done, especially when he's part of a company that deals with esports personalities and players of all ages. Just removing him as CEO, though, isn't going to be enough. Any type of ownership he has in EVO needs to change hands. If he is attached in any way possible, I do not think that EVO will survive. These companies have pulled out their support, and I doubt that they will come back to the event years down the line unless he's completely out of the company. I know that they said they are planning for a complete separation, but we really don't know if that's going to happen or when that is going to happen. Even if they separate from him and he is completely gone, can EVO even survive after that? I'm not sure. Many professional players have distanced themselves already, and I suppose only time will tell, but that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. The fighting game community has completely imploded. EVO Online is canceled for this year following these allegations. It will be interesting to see if companies make any further statements, if EVO makes any statements, if any community members make any statements, if Mr. Wizard will make one more statement. But I mean, he did make the tweet which he kind of apologized for things that he's done in the past. But that is all that I had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Were you excited for EVO Online, or did this really ruin EVO for you? If you enjoyed this video and found it informative and important, please make sure to give it a like, and of course, if you did not, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, and I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.
I need to stop. Fire in the hole! I'm in a bad way.
No. Huh?
Knocked out.
No.
that up.
Ok, parece que todos se ven.
We all relied on government bureaucrats for too much and for too long. Something tells me we won't make that mistake again anytime soon.
Oh no. Oh shit. Whoa.
Maybe I should rest for a moment.
Mm-hmm. Ya está bien cansada, ya no va a poder.
Feels like home.
Well, that was loud.
No creo que vaya a funcionar. Pero bueno. Ok, 13 de comida. No me fue nada mal, de hecho.
Are you looking for TFM's live stream? I'm sorry, but our monkey is.
And morality you think a religion which is created from people who are resentful of their slave masters would promote, which is obviously slave morality. Now, you could argue Judaism, because it was like the Hebrews enslaved by the Egyptians and Moses and all that, similar, but not as bad. Like, it really did. And I don't know enough about the origins of Hinduism, but I don't think it actually came from the Hindus being enslaved to anyone. I don't think Hinduism came from a period of time where the people of India were enslaved, and that's where the religion was born. I think it was just like a folk, because religion, it originates from animism to polytheism to henotheism to monotheism. That's usually how it goes. Now, Hinduism seems to have like stalled out on the polytheism / henotheism phase. It never graduated to monotheism, which is fine. It's whatever. It's a very old religion.
Oh my god.
But I don't think it actually originated from a period of slavery, so I don't know. I haven't looked into Hinduistic morality that deeply. I know they believe in karma, which isn't like, it's about your personal deeds, which is actually kind of interesting, because it doesn't prescribe any type of morality. You just have to, like, whatever you do returns to you, but it's not like you go to hell and are tortured forever unless you give to the poor. It's more like, well, you might be reincarnated as a butterfly or, a herpes sore. I don't know. That's my hot take on Hinduism. I'm not an expert on Hinduism. And I don't know what an NRI is. So, word to the wise, actually don't use acronyms when you ask a question, because otherwise, you gave me $5, but I can't answer the question because I don't know what an NRI is.
And NRI, Googled it because I know what it meant. Either is a non-resident Indian, so like an Indian that lives outside India.
Oh, okay.
So I guess the donor maybe he's Indian.
Right. So if you're Indian and if you're from India, why not go back to India? Like India should be fine. In fact, they're developing nuclear power plants using thorium. So India is actually going to be entering they're already industrialized, but they're actually quickly becoming a pretty developed country. And once they get nuclear energy going and stop shitting in the street, it could be a pretty up and coming power. So if you're in
It's been a while since we
Go ahead.
talked.
Go ahead.
few Indian friends I have, they want to get out of India. They want to come to the U.S.
Why?
Because better opportunities, better jobs, better education system, so on.
Yeah, but what happens? So,
education system.
Yeah, they know
how long that'll go on.
So yeah, and also so the problem is like I don't think that's going to be going on very much longer. I don't know if because the H-1B visas, Trump froze them, and
true.
So I don't know. I understand. You don't want to work in a call center, and you hear these stories of all these great tech jobs for Indians, but that's going to be drying up pretty quick. And then when the American economy collapses, you're not going to want to be here.
Right. That's the other reason I was telling my other Indian friends, and I don't recommend you coming here around this time because it's not going to last for long, and things are going to collapse, and things are not going to be looking good. Because at least in India, you have places in the wild, in the mountains, and so forth that you can go. You have rice fields and other sorts of things that you can live off of. The average person in the United States doesn't even have that type of instinct. They wouldn't even know how to survive in the woods. To even save their lives. I mean, most would.
If you want to come to America, make sure you're it's a temporary immigration. You're just coming here to work. Make sure you maintain your passport and your Indian citizenship, and you're squirreling money away. Don't come here thinking you're gonna this is where you're gonna live the rest of your life, because when shit hits the fan, you're gonna want to leave. See, the people I feel sorry for are the people who have nowhere to go. The people who have, that scene in Officer and a Gentleman, I've got nowhere else to go. That's the people who are really kind of up against the wall. So if you're an immigrant and you have a home country to return to, if you want to come here to for a couple years to earn some money, fine. But make sure that you can earn that money back fairly quickly, and make sure you're saving it and not blowing it, and make sure that you have something to return home to. Don't burn your bridges as you're coming over here, because you're going to want to go back when shit starts hitting the fan.
I think that big one is carrying.
I would not recommend Indians come to America and try to set up an Indian no-go zone in America. You're going to want to go to India. Think about it. Look at China today versus China in the 60s when it was going through its revolutionary period. So China in the 60s was killing tens of millions of people. Now today, they're not. Even though China's still run by the Communist Party, they're fairly stable. They're educating the workforce. They're trying to create jobs.
Oh shit!
In that in the 60s, though, they're interested in taking total power and killing anything that's on their way. So the key is, during the revolution, you do not want to be there. And so I don't know what the Indian population is in America, but it's probably not that much. And you're better off, if you have the option, you're better off just staying in India and just waiting it out. You don't want to be in a country during a communist revolution. That's not the time to visit.
Yeah, the overall population, unfortunately, it's even much smaller than the population. So not that many Indians here. Right. Do not want to stay here.
I understand the jobs are better, and you might get paid more proportionally. But if you're going to come, make sure you kind of keep one foot back in India. Don't burn your bridges, don't cut all ties. Make sure you have something to come back to, and keep your passport active and keep your citizenship going. That way, if you have to, you can you want to be able to have everything ready, so where if shit hits the fan, you can be on a plane that day and just fucking walk away from it. And that way, while you're making money, squirrel it away, save it, send it back to India, and make your money. I'm not, denigrating making money, but when shit hits the fan, you don't want to be oh shit, I need to join a community. No, you don't want to be here. If you have the option to leave, if you have a family and a homeland to return to, that's where you want to be. The people who are stuck in America are the people who have nowhere else to go. And so a no-go zone is basically their only shot. But, the sad truth is, if you look at communist revolutions, it depends on how far the communist revolution goes. If the communist revolution is like Venezuela, a no-go zone might work. But if the communist revolution goes full Stalin, and they send the military at these no-go zones, they'll kill everyone. Now, you'll die on your feet. There's something to be said for that. But no-go zone can withstand the military. If they're willing to kill their own citizens, which communists are absolutely willing to do, they'll just sweep in and kill everyone in the no-go zone using military weapons.
Okay.
So it really depends on the kind of communist dictator who rises to power during the revolution. Do we get a Hugo Chavez or do we get a Joseph Stalin? If we get a Hugo Chavez, we might be all right. If we get a Stalin, we're all gonna die. I mean, we'll give them hell on our way out, but we're fucked because we don't have the numbers. And if they're willing to use tanks and bombs against us, we can't defend against that with fucking AR-15s.
So before we get to the D-Life chat, just read the Simeon chat on...
Oh, yeah. Matt C. for $10 says, Simeon lives matter. Thank you. Dicks out for Harambe. I haven't forgotten. Alright. From D-Live, we have Altered MGTOW 2.0, donated a diamond. Extreme far right or left, which is more survivable? And then Google Minion said, what is everyone's favorite weapon?
Okay.
I prefer shotguns and flamethrowers. I like to get up close. Not too close. I don't want like a melee weapon. I like to be able to like hear their screams though, so a shotgun or a flamethrower, it's like that perfect distance.
Claro.
Oh, and the first question, extreme far right or left, which is more survivable? Neither. In fact, the extreme when you go full commie, your society collapses. When you go full absolutist, you're basically a slave to this absolute monarch. And if you go full individualist, you go ANCAP. And while ANCAP sounds good in principle, it can't work because of human nature. There's no way that ANCAP will survive more than a year. So no system when it becomes too extreme is it just doesn't work.
Okay.
Then the absolutists would argue, well, warlords, kings, and emperors, those lasted for thousands of years. The system might have, but the dynasties surely didn't. So one king might control a large group of people, and then he'll get killed, and his family will get killed, and replaced with a different family who will control the land and be kings. So you could argue, oh, well, the system endured. Did it, though? So how is it, if this dynasty is wiped out and replaced with an entirely different ruling family, how is it different than a communist dictator? Or republic.
Yeah, and also each king could have very different policies on how to rule the kingdom to secure and maintain his power.
The point is no system lasts forever. No system is sustainable. Like communism, I would argue, is the least sustainable because it's not based on reality, but it's the most popular one by far. So, and eventually, unfortunately, because of numbers, your society will inevitably become more leftist over time unless it collapses. Like the collapse wipes the slate clean because all the weak men who push for communism, they don't survive the collapse because they're weak. Like it culls all the weak from your population, and the strong men who survive, they have to rebuild. But as the society becomes more advanced and weak people survive because of modern medicine or whatever, they become more and more numerous, and they start demanding shit, and then your society becomes more leftist. It's inevitable. So the key isn't to be like, well, I want to create this society that lasts 1,000 years. No society really lasts that long without sliding. So it might last 1,000 years, but you're not even going to recognize the last 500 years. You might have a really good society for a few centuries, and then it'll slowly go through some reforms and become something that you would oppose. And then during the last epoch of its era, it's going to be a complete shit show that you would spit in your grave to see.
Oh, hell yeah.
And they would, but it lasted 1,000 years, but it really didn't. It's like America. Like, one of the reasons why I'm not outside looking at fireworks right now is because America doesn't really exist anymore. Like we have the Constitution, but we don't follow it. We celebrate these holidays. We claim to revere the founding fathers, even though we're pulling their statues down. Like the America that exists today isn't the America that was founded in 1776. That America died a long time ago. So it's like celebrating the birthday of someone who's dead. And some people do that. Like when you have like a loved one who died, some people will still celebrate their birthday after they're dead. But most people don't. Most people understand that when someone is dead, maybe stop celebrating their birthday. So it's sad, but that's America.
Yeah.
But what's
By
everybody
the way,
else's favorite weapon?
My favorite weapon, off the top of my head, I'd probably say MG42. But I mean, it has its flaws, but it's a really solid weapon, and it's one of those weapons that just never seems to die. Halsey said he's stepping out for 10 minutes. I posted a picture in the chat of his preferred weapon. I just don't know what it's called.
Okay.
I don't know what mine is, but Rem's favorite weapon is like a giant flail Morningstar thing.
That's enough scouting.
She's really good with it too.
Yeah, it's like a ball and chain flail. It's like a spiked ball at the end of a chain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Halsey?
As I mentioned, Halsey stepped out for 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So I posted the picture in the chat of this, what he told me what his preferred weapon is. I just don't know what it's called.
Oh, well, who knows?
Yeah. I just love belt-fed weapons, and MG42 is my favorite belt-fed.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I wanted to talk. I kind of wanted to talk to Halsey about this, but I guess he stepped out. So I want to wait for him to come back. So, well, I'll give you the background, and then when Halsey comes back, we can actually get into the meat and potatoes of the argument. So, there was a YouTuber named the Asian Capitalist,
coming in fast.
and I liked him, but they got sucked down the alt-right pipeline, and now the guy's changed his name to a dormant dynasty. He's no longer a capitalist. He's spewing. He's basically an absolutist at this point. And he had a guy on this live stream called Settler's Lament, who's a neo-reactionary. Now, here's the thing about neo-reactionaries, by the way. So I'm a neo-reactionary. So neo-reactionaries like MGTOW. MGTOW is a very low bar and a very wide tent. Like, I'm a libertarian, but you don't have to be a libertarian to be a MGTOW. You can be a communist. There are like people in the manosphere who are leftists and communists and whatever. I mean, it's not like being a communist makes marriage a good idea. Marriage is still a terrible idea whether you believe in Marxism or not. So there are MGTOW across the political spectrum. MGTOW is apolitical. It's just basically an opposition to marriage and cohabitation and gynocentrism. That's all MGTOW is. In the same way, a neo-reactionary is basically someone who opposes democracy.
Oh, shit.
Who thinks democracy is a really fucking stupid idea. Now, I would definitely fall into that camp. However, when you talk to most neo-reactionaries, they're absolutists. A lot of them want to bring back theocracy or kings or fascism. Yes, we're all united in our opposition to democracy. It's just like what our solutions are, where we all go wildly off the rails. And so, a dormant dynasty.
Most people are just the mainstream left and right. Tradcom versus the liberals.
Right, so you have you have the Asian capitalist, now known as a dormant dynasty.
Heavy weapon, okay.
And they had this whole video.
Tengo el arma equivocada.
What's wrong with libertarians? And I was going to make a response video to it. Or not really a response video, but I was going to address some of the points they made. But the audio was all fucked, and so I never made the video. I did record it, but when I was editing it, I realized the audio was ruined, so I just deleted it. But I did want to go over that. Kind of like some of the points. It's really not even that much to go over. It's very basic principles that are really simple to understand. And also people have been sending me, because here's what I've noticed. Absolutists are going hard against libertarians right now.
Damn.
It's not just this one video. There's been articles written. Like, it just seems like the call has gone out. And here's what I think's going on. The alt-right, the absolutist right, the conservative, traditionalist right, whatever you want to call them, they see the writing on the wall that the commies are becoming very strong. Now, I've tried to offer an olive branch to the absolutist right. I understand, look, we may not like each other, but right now we need each other. Just like the way we worked with the Soviet Union during World War II. We obviously had nothing in common with the Soviet Union. We ended up having a Cold War immediately following World War II. But during World War II, we kind of needed to work with the Russians to defeat Japan and Germany. And the same way, like, during the Revolution, there were founding fathers who were pro-slavery. There were founding fathers who were anti-slavery. But if we were going to defeat Great Britain, we needed to fucking put our differences aside And once Great Britain was defeated, then the slave issue became front and center, and then that led to the Civil War. But until Great Britain was dealt with, we had to fucking table that shit because we had a common enemy that we had to defeat. So that's how you win in real life. You find allies you may not like, but that you basically work with because you have a common enemy. Once your common enemy is defeated, then you can go back to hating each other. But for some reason, the absolutist right, they won't see the wisdom in that. So rather than offering an olive branch to the individualists and understanding that we have a common enemy and the communists, we should work together, they are trying to basically co-opt, attack, and I don't know, they're trying to like make they think that like, first of all, they think they're right because they don't understand. They think that, again, the classic fallacy of objective morality. So, just so you know, morality isn't objective. There is no one morality. Like, people will argue, oh, but there is TFM because there's the concept of do unto others as you would have others do unto you. You idiot. That doesn't, first of all, that's not objective. Because we all want to be treated differently. I can disprove, if you think do unto others as you would have others do unto you is objective morality, I can disprove your theory with 4 letters. BDSM. There are people who like to get fucking cock and ball torture.
Yeah,
so
I was just about to bring up what about masochists?
Right, so if you like cock and ball torture and you want someone to stomp on your dick and your balls, and you start stomping on other people's dick and balls and they don't like it, that literally disproves your fucking stupid concept that do unto others as you would have others do unto you proves objective morality. All you're doing is you're taking a subjective standard, like your personal desire to be treated a certain way, and you're universalizing it and calling it objective. But that's fucking retarded. That's like saying, feed your guests your favorite food. Okay, that's a good rule of thumb, but here's the problem. What if you really like something that's offensive to your guest? Like, again, we were talking about India earlier. You have an Indian guest over and you're serving like beef, which they don't like to eat because they think cows are sacred. But, beef is your favorite dish. You love steak and hamburgers and whatnot. So the whole point is that's not universal at all. So there is no universal standard of morality at all. There just isn't. There are all morality is it's values and preferences. Now, values are highly subjective. That's the whole point of the political trichotomy. The communists value equality, the absolutists value stability, and the individuals value freedom. And these are all mutually exclusive. The more free you are, the less stable and the less equal. The more equal you are, the less free and the less stable. The more stable you are, the less equal and the less free. So you have to prioritize these, and that's completely subjective. Like, if you value equality over freedom, I can't disprove that. I can't prove you're wrong for valuing equality. You just value equality. I can show that the outcomes, like these beliefs drive actions, and actions have consequences, and consequences are objective. I can show that outcomes of communism, but that doesn't mean anything to you if they align with your values. And you see this all the time. If you showed a communist that communism doesn't work, now it's killed 100 million people, it doesn't sway them because they think communism is making people more equal and it's the right thing to do even if millions of people die. Just like using the pro-life argument, if abortion lowers crime and takes the burden off the welfare state with less mouths to feed, which is objectively true, that doesn't make it right. Just because it works economically doesn't make it right morally. And to someone who's pro-life, the argument that abortion lowers crime and helps the welfare state be more sustainable will not convince them to be pro-abortion because they are morally against killing babies. They're not like for not killing babies because they don't understand that it works. They're against it morally. When you talk to someone who believes in equality, they're not against freedom and capitalism because they don't understand where wealth comes from. They're against freedom and capitalism because they're morally against it, because they value equality above all. And you can't disprove a value. And when you understand that, you realize that there isn't arguing about trying to enforce your moral code on other people who have different values is a total waste of time. Total and utter waste of. It doesn't mean you can't be neighbors. It just means like you're never going to get them to see the world the way you see it because you have completely different, diametrically opposed, mutually exclusive values. Anyway, before I go any further, we'll wait for Halsey. Let me take care of these super chats. Oh, okay. Well, let me take care of these super chats.
Sebastian Dello for $5 says Mexican standoffs are fine with me as long as you boycott Mexican beer.
Oh, thank you, Sebastian. All right, Allsting Hart for 5 Canadian didgeridoos. I know taking rights away is a solution. It is basically never going to happen. So your no-go zone alternative is the only answer. But what rights would we have to take away from women? What rights should they keep to have a free society? All right, so I've answered this before, but since you donated money, I'll answer it. So here's the thing about women's rights. Because women are not responsible for themselves, by making them equal to men, enslave men. It's that simple. Think about it. Think about going into a job where you are given responsibility over something that you have no authority over. Imagine being put in charge of a team and being told, okay, Bob, welcome. This is your first day at work. This is your team. You're responsible for them. So if they underperform, it's your ass. So I want you to make sure that they're motivated and make sure that they're doing good work. But you have no authority over them. You can't punish them. You can't do anything about them. All you can do is like give them encouragement, but you have no authority to make them work. They're not going to work. So, and then you're getting yelled at for something you have no ability to control because you have no authority over your team. You're going to quit, right? Everyone would. You simply cannot divorce authority from responsibility, but that's what feminism does. Women are fundamentally dependent on men, in the same way that children are fundamentally dependent on their parents. If you were to give children equal rights to their parents, like children and adults had equal rights, you would fundamentally destroy the family. And then imagine being a parent, being told that you have to take care of your children, you have to pay for their schooling and their health care and give them food and clothing, but you can't discipline them. You can't tell them what to do. You can't parent them. But you're responsible for them financially. You're basically a divorced dad paying child support, but you're raising your kids. You're completely financially responsible for them. In fact, if they commit crime, you get arrested for it. But imagine having no authority over your children. You're still responsible for them, but you have no authority. It wouldn't work. And people would stop having kids, and people would frankly abandon their children. If they can't parent their kids, the relationship breaks down, and then families stop existing. That's what happens when you divorce responsibility from authority. And so the problem with women's rights isn't that women should be second-class citizens because I hate women and blah ha ha. No, the problem is women are not responsible for themselves. Yeah. They never have been, they never will be. If you want proof, look at Venezuela. Before the hyperinflation, women were bitching and moaning about how oppressed they were, throwing slut walks and whatnot. As soon as the hyperinflation hit, all that shit ended. All that shit ended. As soon as the government isn't there to give them welfare and protect and provide for them, which is what men do. Without the government creating the illusion of equality, women immediately submit to men. They find a man who will protect them, provide for them, because that's what always happens. So all that happens is the government replaces men. And then women think that they're equal. But meanwhile, men are responsible for women. Who do you think pays all the taxes for the welfare state? Women? Look it up. Men pay all the taxes. So all that's happened is the government has taken the relationship between men and women, which was an individual relationship. An individual woman submits to an individual man who takes care of her and takes responsibility for her. They've replaced that relationship with a third party. So now the government takes care of women by taking the resources from men and then employing men as police and whatnot to be their protectors. It's still men taking care of them and providing for them, and men are still responsible for them, but they have no authority over them.
Nice moves.
And that's why it doesn't work. So taking women's rights away isn't oppressing women. It's liberating men from the enslavement to women that is caused by giving women rights without responsibility. And until you understand the relationship between rights and responsibility, it seems like oppression. Like, oh, TFM would take women's rights away. Oh, he isn't for freedom. No, I am for freedom. Look, like, what is freedom? And we're going to come back to this in a minute. But freedom is basically trying to return to nature. Now, in nature, you're not free to do anything you want. In nature, you have to eat, which means you have to work for food. Whether it's hunting, gathering, farming, something. You need food to live. And so you have to labor to acquire food. You have to labor to build shelter, to have clothing. You have to cooperate, trade. There's competition. That's just nature. None of that violates your freedom. Competition, cooperation, labor is not a violation of your freedom because it's nature. Freedom is just going back to nature, eliminating the artificial constraints on your freedom so that you can live as nature intended. In nature, there is no feminism. There is no gender equality because women are totally unable to take responsibility for themselves in nature.
No problem.
We create artificial institutions like feminism, the family court, the welfare state, to give women the illusion of independence. But it's an illusion. You're enslaving men to sustain it.
Could be worse.
And so freedom for humanity requires women to lose these privileges. That this illusion needs to come down. And when that illusion comes down, what happens? Women voluntarily submit to men. Because first of all, you don't have rights. Nobody has rights. Rights don't exist. They're a fiction. We made them up. So in nature, women submit to men take care of women, men are responsible for women. That's always been the deal. In return, there's families, there's babies, there's sustainability. So that's the score. If you don't like it, I don't fucking care because you're wrong. So what rights should men and women have? First of all, there are no rights. You don't have any rights. And once when we rebuild a system, we can then start defining what rights are conducive to a sustainable society. But equality for women doesn't make sense unless we somehow change human biology where women can be responsible for themselves. Where women can pull their own fucking weight and be equally responsible, then they can have equal rights. But they can't. It's biologically impossible. So just until you understand that, until you internalize that and get it, that's why it doesn't make sense. Like that's what it feels like oppression, but you're simply releasing men from their servitude to women.
Yep, in short answer to that question, what right takeaway, anything they can take responsibility for. That goes back to balance between rights and authority versus responsibility.
Yeah, and we'll cover this in a few minutes when we talk about the absolutist arguments, and I'll refute them. I'll fucking bath them away like Dixie cups. It'll be hilarious. But let me get through the
shit.
Oh, Flammio for $3. The problem of democracy has already been solved. Votes don't matter. Insurrections and monetary subversion is how power changes. That is why Obama seems to have more power than Trump right now. No, it's not about monetary subversion. Like this, it really annoys me the way all these alt-right talking points seem to filter into the mainstream consciousness. It's like you're being programmed by the opposite side. It's not the fucking Fed. It's not the, we abandoned the gold standard. That's what, everyone wants to create this silver bullet solution. The reason why marriage is shit isn't because of no-fault divorce. It's not. And the reason why democracy sucks isn't because of the fucking Fed.
Oh, no.
It isn't because we got off the gold standard. It's fundamental to democracy. So democracy sucks because democracy sucks. Read the Founding Fathers. The Founding Fathers didn't want a democracy. It's not, democracy wasn't great until the Fed came along. It was always shit. We were never supposed to be a democracy. If you really want to point to when we fucked up, it was like the Civil War. And it's a perfect example of doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. Or another way of putting it is solving a short-term problem by creating a much larger long-term problem. So the problem after the Civil War was slavery bad.
Oh no.
We gotta stop it. So let's destroy states' rights. Let's force the Union together. Let's have a Civil War. And then once we win the Civil War, let's completely abolish states' rights and amendments to basically radically change the Constitution to prevent another Civil War from happening. Now, in the short term, sure, you ended slavery and you prevented a second Civil War from happening. Those seem like worthy goals. But what did you do to accomplish that? You destroyed the Constitution. You destroyed the Republic. You solved the short-term problem by creating a much larger long-term problem.
No.
And that's the story of, you know what they say, like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And ending slavery was a very noble thing to do. Fuck slavery. But what is the cost you paid? You destroyed the republic to end slavery. And you ensured that power would flow from the states to the federal government. And the states would have to rubber stamp whatever the federal government wanted. The entire basis of federalism was destroyed. And then because of the Electoral College, like in a proper national government, you just have popular votes. The whole point of the Electoral College is we weren't supposed to be a fucking democracy. We were supposed to have, the state was supposed to be where the power was. The individual state where you lived. Now, because of the Electoral College and this like weird hybrid of democracy and republicanism, you have basically only the battleground states elect the president. Yeah. If you live in a blue state or a red state that's winner-take-all electoral votes, your vote doesn't mean shit. And the vote for the president is the only one that matters, which means like 90% of the people in this country's vote don't mean shit because you live in either a blue state or a red state and no one gives a shit. And it wasn't supposed to be that way, but it became that way because slavery bad and we needed to prevent another civil war. We created a long-term big problem to solve a short-term problem. And so these problems did not originate with Woodrow Wilson and the Fed and the what's the fucking called the all that the getting off the gold standard and all the Bretton Woods agreement and all that shit. So I understand it's tempting, and here's the reason why. The reason why the alt-right or the absolute right, the reason why they blame the banks and corporations, the reason why they're always the boogeyman is very, very simple. Because their solution is more government. If the problem is government, the solution can't also be government. You can't, like, if the problem is X, the solution can't be more X. The solution has to be something not X. So if the solution that they propose is government, the problem can't be government, because then clearly the answer is less government. If the government fucked it up, maybe no government is the answer, or less government is the answer. But if corporations and banks and all these secret societies, if they're the problem, then the government can be the solution. And so that's why they always blame like whenever I hear someone blaming banks and multinational corporations, I know I'm talking to an absolutist. And maybe they don't realize that they're parroting bullshit that like some fascist blog put into their heads. I don't know if they actually like know what they're fucking saying. Probably not. But it's just sad. It's sad because it's not true. It's provably not true. And also the Fed is not a private corporation. It's a part of the fucking government. The board is appointed by the Senate. Like, they're part of the government. It's a magic trick. We used to have, like, actual, like, what's the word I'm looking for? The first two central banks of the U.S. were directly controlled by the government, and the charters ran out, and they were abolished. Because the federal government just prints money like there's no tomorrow. The whole point of the Fed was to create the illusion that it's not the government printing money, wink, wink, nod, nod. But it is. It's just the government printing money. When the government borrows money from the Fed, it's just printing money. It's a magic trick. It's a magic trick to fool you into thinking it's not the government printing money. So by buying into the, like, oh, it's a private corporation that owns the government, the banksters control the government, you're basically falling for the trick. And you're being led by people who want more government. They want fascism or a monarch or a dictator or some bullshit. And so they're trying to sell you on the idea that the problem is not government so that they can propose a solution, which is total government.
Well, come on, TFN, let's give them a little credit. Not often blames though. Sometimes they blame the Jews.
Well, it's synonymous. So they talk about the banks. They always like the Jews are always there, like, you know, wringing their hands with their little happy merchant meme. It's so tiresome. And I can disprove this shit easily in a minute. Let me get to these super chats. Sam the man for $5. TFM, happy Independence Day. My question is, can no-go zones hold out against empires like the Taliban and Viet Cong did? We have seen the British, Russian, and Americans defeated that way. Thoughts? So the problem is, it has to do with how far the government is willing to go. America could have wiped the floor with the Vietnamese at any time if they were willing to just go total war on them. So what I mean by total war is basically what we would call war crimes. So after World War II, we had all kinds of things about like what we can and can't do in war. If a government decides to just say fuck all that shit, you know, we'll use any means at our disposal, then no, like the Vietnamese would be totally fine. If America didn't have like this concept of war crimes and escalation of force, if we would just use any means at our disposal to defeat the enemy by any means necessary, we would have fucking steamrolled the Vietnamese and we would have killed all of them. We would have done it so quickly. We had nukes. We could have fucking blown the shit out of Vietnam in a day. So it really comes down to, is the government willing to do that? If the government is willing to commit war crimes and nuke people or like kill women and children and just, you know, go total war on you, you're kind of fucked. This is what I was talking about earlier. If the communist revolution goes full Stalin and they're willing to genocide their own people, there's really not a lot you can do. Unless you have an army of Terminator waifus where you can, basically you have to fight the army at that point. So the only way to fight an army is with an army. So unfortunately, that you're fucked.
We got zombies attacking base.
Lots of them. You know, what can you do? You can't do anything at that point anyway.
What up?
Okay, a flamio for $3. Taking their personal preferences and universalizing them is what Stefan Molyneux does for a living, and he doesn't even know it. It's what probably most people do, because look, the concept of understanding that morality isn't objective and that values are totally subjective and not universal, this is called nihilism by some people. And if you're a nihilist, you're evil. It's like basically being a heretic. So there are people who literally will not even entertain the idea that morality is not objective. In fact, this is my problem with Ayn Rand. If you ever look into objectivism and Ayn Rand uses the dominant moral framework. She doesn't argue against objective morality. She tries to argue that socialism or collectivism is evil using the same herd morality framework, which is stupid. It's not like I don't care about herd morality within the herd. If the herd wants to be dominated by herd morality, let them. I just don't want to be fucking part of it. And it's not universal. So you keep your shit off of me, and we could let bygones be bygones. All right. Grin Reaper for 6 Australian didgeridoos. Would fascism fast-track the end of communism? At this stage, I can't see a democratic option working. No. And also, that's like basically shooting yourself in the head to keep yourself from dying of a disease. So if you're like, oh man, communism's going to take my freedom away, better just go fascism to stop the communists from taking my freedom. I mean, sure, you stop the communists from taking your freedom by basically giving your freedom to the fascists.
Damn.
So it's literally like you're diagnosed with a fatal illness and you're like, well, I better kill myself before I die of the disease.
Yeah, but also if a communist power force grabs total power, they'll quickly turn fascism and to maintain and total control.
Right, everyone just wants power. And also, like, the idea of communism, it doesn't work because of human nature anyway. So the whole idea is, in theory, communism is supposed to be we abolish private property. And so the people are supposed to share everything. Well, realistically, how do you get there? You abolish private property, but who holds the property? The government. Now, this is a fundamental misunderstanding of who the government is. This idea that the government is us, we're the government, is fucking retarded. Clearly, the government isn't us. Like, I mean, open your fucking eyes. So, the government is the government, and you're just some schlub. So, when the government abolishes private property and takes everything and owns everything, that doesn't mean the people own it. It means the government owns it. You're not the government. So that's a fundamental misunderstanding. But the idea is the government is the people, and when the government takes everything, the government like fades away until you have this communist utopia where everybody works for nothing and takes care of each other like a big family. And it doesn't make any sense. There's no observational evidence for it ever working outside of essentially families or very, very primitive societies that are essentially families too. So when you're talking like hunter-gatherer tribes, everybody was related to each other. They're basically extended families. And then, you know, in a family, you have the father working and providing for everyone. He's asking for nothing in return. There's no money. It's not like, okay, son, I gave you food and a place to live. Now you have to give me something. No one does that. They love their children and they take care of their needs. that's how communism is supposed to work in theory. But the difference is you love your children, you love your family. And when you come down to tribes and small clans, they're your family. You're related to each other. So it just, you can't love strangers. You can't love people who have no fucking tie to you. Like, do you love your next door neighbor? The answer is no. Unless they're your family, unless you have some kind of relationship with you, you don't love them. And even if you say, like, I love them in, like, the humanity sense, but you don't love humanity. Like, it just doesn't exist. Humans they don't work that way. So you're not going to just take care of people you don't know and have absolutely no tie to. And that's why communism can never work. It only works within small units of families who love each other. And the government can't love you.
Yep, and also similar issue with the far right. They just think their people will be in power forever. And they'll always get the good treatment.
Yeah, there's a lot of hashtag our guy double standards in the alt-right. Anyway, so turning to fascism to save from the communism is like killing yourself to avoid dying of cancer. All right, TFM, how big is your dick? I mean, your mom wasn't complaining, so pretty big, I guess. All right, random curiosity for $3. In your opinion, what were the 3 biggest mistakes that the USA has made that put America on the wrong track, besides President Wilson being president? The Civil War, women's suffrage, well, basically universal suffrage. Basically, essentially destroying the Founding Fathers' republic. The abolition of states' rights, the supremacy of the federal government, that was essentially, okay, let me back up. So we are on the Third Republic. There was originally the First Republic of the Founding Fathers that lasted until the Civil War. And that was destroyed and replaced by the Second Republic of Abraham Lincoln. And the Second Republic lasted until FDR, which was replaced with the nanny state, welfare state republic. And that's the republic we're in now. So, it's basically the Civil War, universal suffrage, the welfare state. Boom, boom, boom. Those are the 3 things that fucked America. Welfare, universal suffrage, and the destruction of states' rights and federalism.
Thank you, Woodrow Wilson, and thank you, Lyndon B. Johnson, for ruining America.
Well, yeah, it's Lincoln, Wilson, FDR, and Johnson, and Obama, if you count Obamacare as a massive expansion of the welfare state, which it is. So those are the worst presidents. But I would say Woodrow Wilson's the worst. Holy shit, he's bad. Woodrow Wilson, worst president ever. Johnson, FDR. I'm on the fence whether Obama was worse than Lincoln. Because here's the thing. Lincoln, he did what he thought was right. He basically did the wrong thing for the right reasons.
This place is certainly empty.
So I'm willing to give him like somewhat of leniency because he wasn't trying. It wasn't like a naked grab for power. He was. Sure it was. Well, but he was doing it for. He was legitimately trying to help people. Whereas Johnson and FDR and Wilson was a delusional idiot too. Yeah, I guess, you can't really give them even though they thought they were doing the world. Like, Wilson thought he was making the world a better place, and he fucked everything up. So at some point you have to be like, look, I don't care what your intentions were. You broke the world with your bullshit trying to make the world a better place. So yeah, I guess.
There's a reason why they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah, so I guess fuck Lincoln, because, he might have had good intentions, but he fucked America to accomplish them. Just like Wilson did. Wilson totally fucked America, and the whole time he thought he was making America better. He thought he was making the world better. He thought he was, like, ushering in this new age of progress, and he just completely butt-fucked America in the future.
He not only made the United States worse, but he also made Germany and other countries worse.
Oh, he made the world worse. He broke the world with his bullshit. Anyway.
And in the long term, China's fall to communism even related to that.
So we have 7 July super chats.
Okay, Altered MGTOW 2.0. Wait, I already answered that.
So go to the one that says like 50 lemons by Scrabbles.
It is Is it Scabbles or Scabies?
Is scabies or
Scabblers. All right, I'm gonna tell you, it is scabies. Life gives you lemons. Chuck them at feminists. And then it's scabies again for another diamond. Spare the rod, the child becomes a libtard.
Ah, fuck.
Moogle Minion donated diamond. What is honor? Which country does it best in your opinion? Honor is basically just sacrifice. Think about it. Doing the honorable
and principle.
Yeah, you don't really like honor. The best way to actually have a society isn't to rely on people to do the honorable thing, which is to basically put aside their self-interest. It's to create mutually beneficial relationships, because honor essentially relies on shame. If you don't do the honorable thing, you should be ashamed. But
this might.
It's often, but it's rational. It's very often rational to do the dishonorable thing. Doing the honorable thing is usually the irrational thing to do. So that why they use shame to try to force people to be honorable. So fuck honor. Fuck honor as a concept. What you should have is you should have transparency, and you should have like some kind of legal mechanism like courts. So if someone's defrauding you, you don't rely on their honor for them to not defraud you. You sue the shit out of them and you punish them so they realize it's in their best interest to act honestly to not defraud you. I mean, like, honor's fine. Honor's like a shortcut.
Put the clothes.
Replacing consequences with shame, I guess. It's whatever. I don't put much stock in honor. So I wouldn't even know what political system does it better. I don't care. Hold on. It's Scabies. You got bad credit, Robert. Okay. It's Scabies says, so what would be an ideal political system to you? We're going to talk about that. Another one, TFM, how can I combine MGTOW with Christianity? Well, here's a problem. So the Romans did a very good job of Romanizing Christianity. So Christianity was when it was first founded, it was kind of a shit show. But the Romans came along and they Romanized it. They actually turned it into a pretty decent religion that promoted like civil well-being. The problem is once the printing press was invented, once people could read the Bible, they realized that all these Roman things weren't in the Bible. So the very things that made Christianity work and like to the benefit of the state and the society were extra biblical, and so people started rejecting them. And that's why you saw the invention of not just Protestantism, like the original Protestants, like the Lutherans and the Methodists, they were kind of similar to the Catholics. They didn't depart too much. But the evangelicals, holy shit. The sola scriptura evangelicals, if it's not in the Bible, fuck it. And they only did what was in the Bible. They basically brought back the worst kind of Christianity, and that's where you get all these super progressive, like lesbian priests, like all that shit. It's from the evangelical Christians, because like the stuff that the Romans added was actually like a good idea, but it wasn't in the Bible. So they relied on people's ignorance, like they couldn't read the Bible, so they did what the priest told them to, and then Christianity worked for 1,000 years. But it was destined to fail once people could read the Bible, because the foundation of the religion was bad. And you could reform it. It's like right now, there are parts in the Bible that endorse slavery, that endorse patriarchy, that endorse all kinds of shit. And most Christians today simply ignore them and say, oh, that was allegory, that was a specific time and place, it doesn't work. Like they have like a throwaway line to where like this part of the Bible doesn't apply, this is literal, but this is symbolic, that sort of thing. And that's totally fine. But if you look at how, like, look what you believe versus what Christians believed 100 years ago, or 500 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, and they're all totally different, the same book. Because the religions always adapt to the culture. But so heavy. I don't know, like Christianity is flawed in its exception. You can reform it the way the Romans did, but it's destined to fail, because at the end of the day people always go back to the basics, and the basics of Christianity are founded on herd morality. So like you have patriarchal pseudo like orthodox Christians that are totally good, like they serve a good purpose, but you have to understand that their traditions are extra biblical. They're not found in the Bible. So like basically Christianity can be reformed into whatever you want it to be, but in time your own people will say, oh, you're doing this, but this isn't in the Bible. I want to go back to that we all need to share everything, and we need to tell the rich people that they have to go through the eye of a needle, and so you can't have riches, and like that's where all that shit comes from. So basically, you're swimming upstream. You're fighting against the very religion you're trying to incorporate. All right. Are we done? Okay. Does TFM not read DLive comments? I do, but because there's no alert, I get to them when I get to them. All right. Are we caught up? Okay. So Halsey, I wanted to talk to you about this. So here's my critique on the neo-reactionary absolutist argument. So it really comes down to two things. They fundamentally don't understand what freedom is, and there's two ways to solve all problems in society. You can force people to do the right thing, or you can simply let them suffer the natural consequences of doing the wrong thing and not help them. Now, one of these infringes on your freedom, costs a lot of money, and you're basically punishing everyone for the sake of the minority. The second one only punishes those who basically fuck up, costs nothing, and doesn't infringe on anyone's freedom. But the absolutists refuse to acknowledge the second option. So, in this video, again, this is from the... what's his name? He used to be the Asian capitalist, but now he's a Dorman Dynasty, and then he had Settler's Lament, and they were talking about libertarians and talking shit. So, the first thing they talk about is how freedom... There's this juxtaposition between... Oh, well, if we want a right-wing society where we have, like, no welfare and people can do this, that doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. And they say, like, well, if you go into, like, a private theater, you can't do whatever you want. And that's true. It's the same thing with a company. If you work as an employee in a company, you're going to have to agree to a certain dress code, a certain speech code. You're going to have to show up on time and do work if you want to get paid. And you're agreeing to abide by those standards in order to get paid. You're benefiting, and you're giving up a little bit of freedom for the benefit of working at this company. Same thing with the homeowners association. If you want to live in this neighborhood, you have to submit to the homeowners association, and they're going to tell you you're going to have to mow your grass, you're going to have to do this and that. It's going to cost you a little bit of money, but the benefit is you get to live in a fairly nice neighborhood. You don't have to live there. You can go out in the more rural area where you buy the land and build the house, and there's no homeowners association, but that's going to cost you a lot more to do that. If you want to live in like a development, there's going to be a homeowners association. But nothing's being forced on you. And you can have properties adjacent to each other, one of which has homeowners association and one that doesn't. And you can vote with your feet and your wallet and do whatever you want. So you can do whatever you want. But the fundamental problem with the absolutists is they understand freedom in the absolute sense. They're very absolutist, these absolutists. They always think in absolutes. I don't understand why absolutists always think in absolutes, but all they do, everything's absolute to them. It's crazy. But so... they look at it this way. So freedom is doing whatever you want, which it isn't. Freedom is being basically look at the natural standard. And there's a very simple thought experiment to basically understand this concept. Or if you're talking to an absolutist and they're arguing that freedom doesn't work or freedom is bullshit and we need collectivism, I guarantee you, because people have been sending me videos about this, and here's the same mistake they all make. They combine political freedom with freedom from nature. First of all, you cannot be free from nature. And what I mean by free from nature is, as a living organism, you need food, you need shelter, you need warmth, you need like basic necessities for life, and you have to labor for them. Now, so the question is, when these people start talking about how libertarianism is bullshit and freedom doesn't work, it doesn't exist, ask them one simple question. Are wild animals free? It seems like a really obvious answer, but if they say no, wild animals are not free, then ask them who's enslaving them? Who owns them? They're wild animals living in the jungle or the forest. How are they not free? And they'll say, well, like, they have to eat, they have to labor, they have to compete. And so they're not free to do whatever they want, whenever they want. Therefore, they're not free. So
see you later.
Now you understand their fundamental misunderstanding of freedom. Freedom is not freedom from nature. You have to labor, you have to compete, you have to cooperate, you have to trade. These are things animals do in the wild. So if animals are doing it in the wild, and we all agree there's no government in the fucking wild animals.
There's a hierarchy, but not a government.
There's a hierarchy, there's no government, but the hierarchy is mutually beneficial. So, and like in thing like look at bees with the queen. The queen bee doesn't actually issue orders. The queen bee just fucks and makes babies. It's not like the queen is like actual royalty. You could easily replace the word queen bee with broodmare. Like that's all they do. The bees just do what their instincts compel them to do. But there's no like actual government in these wild animals or these insects or anything. There's a hierarchy. Usually it's by the people who are best able to lead. It's a meritocracy. That's just nature though. So there's always a hierarchy. There's always competition. There's always labor. Because that's nature. But freedom is being free from artificial constraints from nature. In a free, natural setting, you would have meritocracy, hierarchy, labor, competition, so on and so forth. That's freedom. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want, whenever you want, without any restrictions. Because to them, the way they justify that is true freedom is like, so if you're poor and you can't afford food, you're not free because you're starving. So unless the government by the government giving you food, they're making you more free. It's like, that's
a collectivist argument, not an absolutist.
I got that.
Well, but
the alternative.
The absolutists are collectivists.
In a sense.
So the first thing they do is they try to denounce freedom as viable by confusing political freedom with freedom from nature, and by declaring that freedom from nature is impossible, which it is. So since freedom from nature is impossible, thus freedom is impossible. Therefore, valuing freedom is stupid. And so since we all admit that we have to act collectively, because in nature, there's hierarchy, there's cooperation, there's labor, there's competition. In social species like humans, we have to cooperate and work with each other to survive. So because of that, there is no freedom. We're all collectivistic. Therefore, valuing freedom is dumb. But they're fundamentally misunderstanding freedom from nature and political freedom. So we can all cooperate within a meritocratic social dominance hierarchy like animals. No one's freedom is being infringed until you create artificial constructs, things like governments and laws, taxes, redistribution. That's when your freedom become eroded, because political freedom. That's what we want to be free from. So that's point number one. Absolutists and collectivists in general. And what's really weird is whenever they start their rant, they always say, I used to be a libertarian. It's like, that's your first red flag. But they fundamentally misunderstand freedom. The second thing, in this video, they were talking about, so these libertarians, whenever they're asked about porn addiction or video game addiction, they're always like, Lamau, more liberty, bro, ha ha ha, or be a better parent, bro, ha ha ha. And so, this is fucking retarded. Again, at the end of the day, there's two ways to solve any problem. You can force people to do the right thing, basically punishing everyone for the sake of the few, infringing on their costing them money, creating an enforcement mechanism of the government to make sure that people can't do the thing that's bad for a minority of people. Or just let the dumb people suffer the consequence of their actions and just don't help them. That's a perfectly perfectly viable, I guess it could be vile to some people. I consider it a very viable answer. Let natural selection work. That's how you solve this problem. So let's cover these one at a time, because according to Settlers Lament and Dormant Dynasty, libertarians don't have an answer to porn addiction and video game addiction. So here's the libertarian answer to porn addiction and video game addiction. All right, video game addiction. So you play video games for 16 hours a day. All right, how are you paying for your power bill? How are you paying for these video games? If you're working 16 hours a day, one of two things are true. Either one, you are independently wealthy, and you're basically like, or you're an esports player. You're getting literally paid to play video games. In which case, who fucking cares? If you're independently wealthy and you want to spend 16 hours a day playing video games, or if you play video games professionally, good. You're actually creating a service. Like, people will tune in and watch people who are pro video game players play video games, and then advertisers add value to that by putting ads on it and making money and paying the people, and they can earn a living playing video games. There's no problem with that. As far as video game addiction, though, if you're talking about people who aren't professional video game players and who aren't independently wealthy, then somebody is taking care of them. Now, if that's the case, then one of several things are true. Maybe they are a grown man-child living with their single mom. and the single mom doesn't want to be alone. Kind of like, you know how single moms or single women in general collect cats? The reason why they collect cats is they want someone to come home to. They don't want to come home to an empty house and feel like there's nobody there. And so they collect cats to come home to. And the cats end up eating their fingers and their nose and they die. Some women, though, they allow their adult male children to stay with them basically indefinitely. They want them there. Because, like a pet, they want someone to come home to. Coming home to their adult son is better than coming home to an empty house, as far as they're concerned. Now, is that entirely healthy? Maybe not. But it's none of your fucking business. And if both parties benefit from this, like if the adult man is like, hey, I get to stay home while my mom basically does my laundry for me and everything, and I get to play video games all day and I don't even need to get a job, whatever. I mean, nobody's not consenting to this. The mother is taking care of the son, and the son is playing video games and basically acting as a pet to his mother. So if that's true, you may not like it, but it's none of your fucking business. Or number two, he's on welfare. So maybe the guy's on disability or something, and he can't work or doesn't want to work, and he's sitting at home playing video games all day. So the problem isn't quote-unquote video game addiction. The problem is either welfare dependence, or really that's the only problem. If it's a woman voluntarily taking care of her child into adulthood, that's none of your fucking business. Like, who are you? Oh, yeah. What would banning video games even do in that situation?
It just drives into the black market and all that.
Well, but I mean, let's say we went back in time before video games existed. You don't think, like, divorced women would keep their adult children around before video games existed? This isn't a problem that video games created. So the video game addiction argument is basically it's ignoring the actual problem. So there really is, like, they make a joke, like, libertarians just deny the problem exists. What is, the fundamental problem of video game addiction is welfare dependence. Because I have it on good authority that video games cost money, internet connections cost money, and electricity costs money. So if they're playing video games all day and not working, eventually their power gets shut off, their internet service provider gets shut off, and they can't play video games anymore, and the problem solves itself. So again, you don't have to solve this problem by banning video games. You just stop giving them welfare, and they will get a job because otherwise they need to work in order to sustain their lifestyle regardless. And if they are sustaining their lifestyle, if they work, full-time or part-time, and they spend their free time playing video games, it's none of your fucking business. You may not like it.
That's a problem to a lot of absolutists. They think that's not productive now. That's not something they like. They demand people to give up more individual free time to do something they consider more productive and helpful.
Well, like fishing. Or like reading the Bible or something. Like, it's dumb. Like, look.
And also a comparison I find between the really more hardcore absolutists is a lot of supervillains and superhero movies. So they correctly identify some issue, something wrong with humanity or the current society, right? But then where they go off the rail, be a clear villain, it's they decide they're the only ones who to be judge, jury, and decide what people should do and how society should function and run.
Right. So that what they do is they decide that our morality, the absolutists, they decide that their morality is morality, and anyone who violates it is a degenerate, and they need to ban all degeneracy because that's how you get a strong society, by banning everyone who disagrees with you and by making everything illegal that you don't like. So let's go to the second argument, porn addiction. So porn addiction is a real thing. Sex addiction is, you could be addicted to anything. People are addicted to food. People are addicted to fucking everything. Like, people are addicted to work. There are people who are workaholics who work themselves like 60, 80-hour work weeks. Now, you might, that's a good thing. They're so productive. But, it's an addiction. And it has negative consequences on their life. So what you consider, like, the difference between a passion and an addiction is whether it's beneficial or negative. If you might be, like, frankly addicted to something, but because it benefits your life, you're just passionate. Oh man, you're so passionate. You're always just burning the midnight oil, doing this great thing, but it's so good that you're doing it, and we just love you for it, right? So no one has a problem if the addiction is beneficial. That's a passion. When the addiction is negative, it's an addiction. But so one of the things that pisses me off is the way the absolutists, they equate the porn addiction epidemic with the destruction of the family and all this other shit. But that has nothing to do with porn. It has everything to do with the empowerment of women.
Sure thing.
So this idea of like, and banning porn would do nothing. And I got into this with Black Pigeon Speaks back in the day. He did a video talking about how MGTOW was a problem and porn was a problem, and we need to regulate porn because it's destroying the family. No, it's not. I mean, look, there's I can't remember, I don't have the article in front of me, but there was an article written in like a female blog where they asked over 1,500 women why they aren't having kids.
I need you for something.
And they all gave answers. They organized those answers into general groups. Not one of them said because porn and video games and MGTOW. Not one. Women aren't having kids and the families are destroyed because women are choosing that path. It has nothing to do with porn. It has nothing to do with Tinder. It has everything to do with two things. Are you ready? Women voting and women working, and the welfare state, if you want to throw that in. That's what destroyed the family, not porn. Right. So ban porn.
Oh, nice.
It will do nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, it's just another case of attacking the symptom instead of the cause.
Well, it's banning the thing they don't.
They can't really blame women for anything. They blame anything alternative that men enjoy other than a traditional relationship and marriage.
Well, it's literally like in the 90s. Remember the Columbine shooting? They tried to blame it on Doom. Now, why did they blame Doom for Columbine? Because they were old boomers and they didn't understand video games, so they just blamed the thing they didn't understand. And then, there's actually an article from the 1950s when the boomers were young, talking where I think it was Utah or somebody banning Elvis because his hip shaking was corrupting the youth. Now, boomers would laugh and say, our parents were such squares, man. They tried to ban Elvis because they thought his hip shaking was corrupting the youth. But then they turn around and be like, oh, the video games are corrupting the youth. The animus are corrupting the youth. The porn is corrupting the youth. It's like, shut the fuck up. There's nothing to do with anything like that. Like, the answer is so obvious. It's right in front of you. But people want to find the easy answer. And also the thing they don't like anyway. Like, boomers didn't like seeing their kids, the parents didn't like Elvis back when the boomers were teenagers. They thought Elvis was bad, and so they blamed Elvis for, every time, teenagers will always rebel against their parents. They'll always be, pranksters and smartasses. And so the parents always blame whatever the kids are into that they don't like. So the kids, being smart with their parents. It's obviously YouTube, it's Fortnite, it's Minecraft, it's PewDiePie, it's whatever I don't like that you're into. That's the problem. And then go back a generation. It's D&D, it's video games, it's Doom, it's rock and roll, it's heavy metal. Go back a generation. Oh, it's Elvis's hips. It's always whatever the kids are into that the fucking old people don't understand. And these absolutists blaming porn and porn addiction is fucking retarded. Blaming it for what? Are people addicted to porn? Sure. There are people addicted to everything. Open up a tab or go to YouTube and type "My Strange Addiction." There are people who eat poop. They eat their own shit. They're addicted to eating shit. You can get addicted to anything. So, what do? Do you ban porn for everybody? First of all, you're not going to even be able to do that regardless. They've been trying to stop boys from masturbating for centuries. It doesn't work.
A break.
They used to tell boys if you masturbated, you become a werewolf. And you get hair on your palms. And you go cross-eyed. And all this stupid shit that didn't have any basis in reality because they thought boys masturbating was going to destroy their minds and make them insane. And they just blamed everything on masturbating. So prior to the internet, boys masturbated because boys have a very powerful sex drive and they're going to masturbate. Back in the 90s, before internet porn, they had the Spice Channel, and I used to beat my dick like it owed me money. I probably 5 times a day. And, it was rough going. I had to beat off to comic books, like Psylocke was my jam at the time. I beat off to Psylocke.
Por fin voy a poder reclamar este.
Whatever I could get hold of because I didn't have access to porn. But be assured, I beat my fucking dick like it owed me money, and no one could stop me. So you get rid of porn, you don't stop anything. And I'm sure there are people who are porn addicts even then. They got addicted to like jerking off to catalogs and comic books or whatever they could get a hold of because they're horny teenagers with a sex drive.
Okay.
And banning porn will do nothing. And so, and look, there are people like let's look at loot boxes. Look at a stupid, innocuous example. And let's also talk about banning everything for everyone for the sake of the few people who become addicts. So loot boxes. Let's talk about Jim Sterling. Jim Sterling is morbidly obese. And by his own admission, the reason why he doesn't like loot boxes is because he has very little willpower, and he finds himself buying loot boxes without wanting to. His lack of willpower translates into him crusading against loot boxes. Now, me, I love loot boxes. Why? Because I enjoy free-to-play games. I enjoy games that I can play for free. These are like really good games with a lot of work put into them. I mean, back in like the old days, like the 8-bit and 16-bit era, there were no free games. If you were lucky in the PS1 era, you got a demo disc where you could play like the first level of a game, and that was it. Play the first level and you're done. Now you can play entire games for free. Why? Because there are some people who basically pay for everyone else. They're whales, and they pay all this money to have a competitive advantage, to get all the fucking stupid particle effects on their items. Meanwhile, you get to enjoy a free game. Who cares? Loot boxes aren't evil. Yeah, there's a small amount of people who are addicts and who spend too much money, and sure, those people need help. You know, like maybe they need to hire someone to manage their finances for them. But you don't ban loot boxes for everyone. So now we all have to pay more for our games and no more free games for me. I have fucking willpower. I don't need you fucking holding my hand and taking care of me because like I can take care of myself. I know how to not buy a loot box. I know how to not pay for shit if I'm playing a game. Like if I'm playing a game and I reach a hard wall where I have to pay to continue playing, I beat the game and I uninstall. Like, well, I beat that game and I move on. If I'm really interested in the story, I'll pull up a YouTube video and I'll watch a video of the story if I really care about how the story ended. Done and done.
Yeah, the people that usually like to go for video games and talk about how addictive they are, they're usually the people that are projecting their own insecurities and their own addictions. I don't remember the name of the YouTuber, but he did this whole big like Christian sermon saying that video games are for losers and that you lose time, you lose relationships and blah blah blah. Well, he was basically projecting his own past addictions onto everybody else.
Yeah,
there's nowhere in the Bible said that you can't entertain yourself here and there.
And also, in Europe, some countries are already the government stepping in to ban loot boxes or gamble simulations because the people can't control themselves, and that's just going to cause more government control on entertainment, and the video game prices will go up.
Yeah, we all have to pay more. Now, most people who are whales, they do it voluntarily. Now, there are a few sob stories. These are usually people on who are disabled. They're disabled, they have nothing to do all day, so they play video games all day. They can't leave their home, they can't work, they're completely dependent on the government. And so they have fixed income, and they end up becoming addicted to a video game, and they spend all their money, and they sob story and talk about, I can't help myself, I have, like my brain doesn't work and I'm disabled. Okay, fine. So maybe put someone in charge of their money. Like, so there's like, I don't even know what it works out to, 1%, maybe 1% of the people who spend too much in video games are like disabled people who are like, but there's a solution for that. You have someone who manages their money for them. You know, like when you have a senile or demented old relative who is so riddled with Alzheimer's that they no longer know where they are, someone has to manage their affairs for them because they've lost the capacity to manage their own affairs. It doesn't mean but you don't ban everything. You don't say, oh, this poor old person doesn't know what day of the week it is, let's ban everything to protect him. No, you protect, like, it's like coronavirus. So the very elderly, the very sick, people with AIDS, they're the only ones at risk of dying of coronavirus. So you can ban everybody from working, shut down non-essential businesses, make everybody wear a mask, or you protect the vulnerable and let everybody else just go about their day. There's a very clear right answer to this because more people have died of suicide from the shitty economy than of coronavirus. But, you know, or the people who did die, the people who did die were going to die anyway. Like the 400,000 people die in nursing homes every year, but they're counting everything as coronavirus. If you died of something unrelated to coronavirus, if you have coronavirus, they're counting it as a coronavirus death. Makes no sense. We've never done that before. It's fucking juicing up the numbers, but it's total bullshit. And so the porn addiction argument, like the people who are addicted to porn, look, give them resources to deal with their shit, but don't infringe on everyone else's rights or everyone else's freedoms because of this small minority of people. Just like, are we going to ban, like, let's ban McDonald's. Let's ban junk food. Let's ban everything because, oh, we have an obesity epidemic. And so there are people who can't control their fucking dieting. They have to keep shoving shit in their face. And so for their sake, we have to ban everything but salad. Everyone in the fucking country has to eat nothing but salad for 3 meals a day until the obesity problem is under control. Now, that is one way to solve it. Or, how about don't give people who are morbidly obese disability? Because food costs money. And if they're too fat to work and they can't buy food because they don't have any money, I have it on good authority that without food, you lose weight. So again, at the end of this is the fundamental problem with absolutists. They bring up a question like, what about degeneracy? What about this thing? And what about that thing? We have to ban it. What's your solution? More freedom, Lamau. So because they don't understand, there's a second option. You could force people to do the right thing. You can take their freedom away. You can create this very expensive enforcement mechanism. You can create government agencies that kick in doors and arrest people for doing the thing. That's one way to solve the problem. It's very expensive. It infringes on our freedom, and it's bad. And in fact, like, and also the absolutes don't understand that because people have different values, other people can use these same tools against you. So you think banning porn is good because porn is degeneracy, but then you don't like it when like
gun control.
Well, gun control or prayer is banned from school. Like, you can't pray in school because blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, but we should be free to pray in school. Well, people don't want, like, your Christian bullshit in school. I'm like, oh, but it's not bullshit. It's good for, like, you're projecting, you retard. Like, people who don't share your values can use the same tools that you use against them against you. Like, this is what pisses me off is, so the main problem with the communists, the reason why everyone hates them, is because they're forcing their shit down your throat. They're indoctrinating your children. They're forcing their shit down your throat and trying to force you to live according to their values. That's why everyone hates them. And then the absolutist answer is to do the exact same thing, but the opposite. So instead of forcing SJW values down your throat, indoctrinating your children into being diverse and pro-LGBT, let's indoctrinate your children into Christianity. Let's ban shit and let's instill in them our values. As if that's better. It's the same goddamn thing. But there is a second option. Let natural selection work. All you have to do, you can actually solve degeneracy.
I'm listening.
Without infringing on anyone's freedom, without costing anyone money, by simply letting people suffer the natural consequences of their bad choices. So if you're addicted to video games and you lose your job because instead of going to work, you stay home and play video games, you lose your job, your power gets cut, you lose your internet, you end up selling your video games, and then lo and behold, you hit your rock bottom and you turn your life around. You voluntarily realize, oh shit, video games negatively affected my life. I learned a valuable lesson. I'm going to choose to get my life together, and I'm going to walk away from video games and I'm going to get a job. And how did that happen?
Well, or you die. If you go that, you get lazy.
Or you die. But see, some people will only change when they hit their rock bottom. And so I want you to imagine, let's use an extreme example. You have a brother who's a crack addict or a meth addict or pick whatever hard drug you want to substitute. So you love your brother. You don't want him to die, but he's completely addicted to drugs. And every time he goes to rehab, he ends up leaving and going back on drugs. The only way so you can do one of two things. You can basically shadow your brother 24/7. And anytime he goes out to buy crack, you like, I don't know, call the cops on him and send him to rehab. And rehab is very expensive. So this whole time, you're keeping your brother from doing crack. You're taking away his freedom. You're costing him and the taxpayers and however many people all kinds of money. Like, let's say you hire a private eye to shadow your brother to make sure he's not smoking crack. So you're paying this private eye to shadow your brother. You're paying for the rehab. You're paying all this money to keep your brother from doing this. That's one way to do it. It's the worst way possible to do it. And at the end of the day, your brother isn't becoming a better person. You're not stopping the degeneracy. He's just itching for a chance to basically get away and do it behind your back, or find a way to do it where you won't find out. You're basically just, you're not healing him, you're just driving him underground. Now, the way to heal someone who has an addiction is to let them suffer the natural consequences of their actions. There are addicts who basically, they lose everything and they break down, and then they finally realize they need help. Only when they lost everything. When they hit their rock bottom, that's when they decide to heal. So by letting people suffer the natural consequence of their actions, you actually heal them. You won't heal everyone. Some people will die. Some people's rock bottom is death. And you have to understand that there's nothing you can do about that. You can't save those people. Those people who will not save themselves cannot be saved, period. And all you can do is basically babysit them for their entire life. And they'll never be worth a shit, because in order to make them worth a shit, they have to stop being addicted. But you're not going to stop them from being addicted if you're just shadowing them their whole life. They have to change themselves. Like, if you've been in a relationship, you know this. You cannot change other people. They have to choose to change themselves. So how do you stop degeneracy? It's very simple. You let people suffer the natural consequences of their degeneracy. I'm using their language to try to build the bridge, but follow along with me. Let them suffer the natural consequences of their degeneracy. And when they hit their rock bottom, and they see that they've ruined their life, then they will be ready to change themselves. And in this way, not only do you actually heal them, but you don't infringe on anyone's freedom. You're not banning things for everyone. You're simply letting people who if they fuck up their life, they fuck up their life, but they learn. This isn't hard. And if there were, the problem is, and the reason why, like, for example, I don't favor legalizing drugs is because I have to pay for their health care and their disability. So because I have to pay for their shit when they make bad choices, I don't want them making bad choices. But the solution is to get rid of the fucking welfare state. If I wasn't paying for their health care and disability, do all the drugs if you want. But when you die, that's what you get.
Take this nice
and people, like, if people see people dying of drugs, they'll get their shit together. They'll say, oh, fuck, I don't want to do that. Like, everyone's dying, and no one's taking care of them because there's no welfare state anymore. Good. Let the surplus population weed itself out. Let natural selection work. Natural selection works really well if you allow it to. Welfare fucks it up.
We grow up in school, like, going to, like, taking classes that teach us about drugs and how they kill you and how it's not good to do in the first place. If you still do drugs after that, you get what you deserve.
But that's the libertarian solution. Like, they act like it's not a solution. They're like, more liberty. No, more personal responsibility. That's the solution. The answer to bad choices is to suffer the consequences of your choices. But when you have the government taking away responsibility from your choices, so you fuck your life up, and then someone else has to pay your health care, or someone else pays your welfare, and you're not allowed to suffer the consequences of your choices, what happens? You just stay there. You just stay there, and you get worse, and you get bitter. There's no healing. The only way to heal is to feel the consequences. Hit your rock bottom. Lose everything. Eventually, you'll get your shit together or you'll die. That's what people need. And what's dumb is the absolutist argument. So when you have someone who refuses to live by their code, they have no problem torturing and killing them. So they're not like more compassionate. So I'm willing to let people die by their own choices. The absolutists want to torture and kill you for not conforming to their beliefs. So in one way, I'm letting nature take its course. I'm not killing anyone. I'm just letting them die by their own hand. Like, and the thing is, like, I'm giving them every opportunity to save themselves by hitting the rock bottom and wanting to be saved. But you're, like, torturing people, you know, calling them heretics or whatever, or degenerates, you know, throwing them in jail, taking their property away, banning shit because you don't like it, forcing people to live according to what you want.
Yep, a lot of times preemptively. At the expense of freedom and choices.
Right, yeah, and the thing is like, sure, like, if it's if you're infringing on other people's rights, then it needs to be illegal. But, like, when it comes to so-called degeneracy, it's basically just shit that they don't like, that's not hurting anyone. And, like, I don't care about drugs per se, as long as I'm not paying for your health ability. If you want to destroy your body with drugs, go for it. But I don't want to pay for it. But as long as I'm paying for it, drugs cannot be legal as long as I'm paying for your health care. And what's fucking stupid is I've told these people who want to abolish drug laws, I'm like, cool, we need to abolish welfare first. And I lay out the case to tell them, if we abolish welfare first, I will totally support legalizing all drugs. And they never go for it. Like, I'm holding my hand out saying, let's legalize drugs together, but first we need to abolish welfare first. And they're always like, well, no, I don't want to do that. So they want it both ways. They want someone to take care of them, but then they want to be free too. It doesn't work that way. True freedom requires responsibility. And by that I mean nobody catches you when you fall. If you fuck your life up because of your poor choices, you suffer the consequences of your poor choices. That's responsibility. That's the answer to degeneracy. That's the libertarian answer. That's what freedom means. And it doesn't mean freedom from nature. It means not people like you forcing shit down my throat and taking my freedom away because you use like a couple sob stories of people who are disabled or have no self-control. And so for their sake, we all have to be less free, less poor, or more poor, because there's a few people who
I'm going to clear out an infestation.
Who are, have it bad. Well, like, I don't care.
Can't let the zombies
and also,
take
like,
over our town.
If there are people who are that much of a genetic dead end, why are we prioritizing them anyway? Like, why are we prioritizing morbidly obese people? Are they really that important to society? What will happen if morbidly obese people with no self-control just eat themselves to death? I would argue the stock of the country would become stronger. Those genetic dead ends would be cut off. The worst thing to do is give them money to reproduce via welfare. Paying them to have kids that they don't even want or can't even take care of. And then you're just multiplying these dysgenic mutations of people with no self-control. That's caused by welfare. Get rid of the fucking welfare. Like, you don't see these things in nature because in nature, nobody catches you when you fall. If you like, I don't know, eat shit you shouldn't eat, or, you know, do something dumb in nature and you die, that's it. Your bloodline ends. Because you did something stupid. And what happens? Eventually, animals learn, hey, don't do that. Because fucking Carl got eaten by a wolf the other day or some shit. So anyway, that's my answer to these neo-reactionary absolutists who denigrate libertarianism and freedom and don't understand that freedom requires responsibility. And you can solve degeneracy by getting out of the way of letting people suffer the consequences of their actions. No government required, no censorship, no bannings. Like this idea that, oh, like porn addiction and video game addiction are such a huge social problem. No, they're not. Get rid of welfare. Watch the problem magically solve itself. Like, if people can sit home and play video games and jerk off to porn 24/7 and someone else has to take care of them, then I can see there's a social problem. What is the problem? Is the problem the porn and the video games? Or is the problem the people sitting on welfare being taken care of by other people? That's the problem.
It's the same, and it's that same old saying. The quickest way someone goes from supporting censorship and banning to opposing it is if something they like gets banned. Like gun control, a big one for a lot of right wing.
Right, well, and they would say that, like, I have a fundamental right to have a gun and defend myself. Well,
but I have people don't have, according to them, people don't have the fundamental right to how to enjoy their free time with entertainment.
Right. So, you can't exactly. Now, the key is your rights end when they infringe on the rights of others. So you have a right to defend yourself. You don't have a right to rob people. So, but the gun isn't the problem. The problem is the people who misuse the gun to commit crimes. So I'm totally for gun rights. I'm just using that as an example. And also, what's funny is the left's argument for gun control is exactly like the absolutist argument for banning degeneracy.
A few people got killed by some crazy gun owner, and then everyone banned.
Right, we need to ban it for everyone because we need to prevent these tragedies from happening. Which obviously, if you look at the people who are pro gun, they'll point out that guns do all these wonderful things, and the percentage of crime is very small. And also, the answer to the gun crime isn't to ban guns. And also, countries that have banned guns experience more violent crime. Not gun-related crime, but more violent crime in general through knives, batons, whatever. People use other weapons to commit violent crime, and violent crime goes up without guns. So you're not really solving the problem. But just like instead of banning guns, we can solve the actual problem. The problem is the high crime rate. Well, what is causing the high crime rate? Welfare dependence. So once again, instead of banning guns, we should be banning welfare. And then without welfare dependence, people wouldn't be dependent on the state. They get a fucking job, and then maybe they wouldn't commit crimes and become pieces of shit. They wouldn't have a bunch of kids with, no father around and raise them to be gangbangers. So welfare, I've proven that. I'm not even going to bring the chart up. You've seen the chart 100 times. Welfare dependence is the problem of the black community, not too many guns. But the left wants to ban the guns instead of the welfare, and the right wants to ban the porn and the video games instead of the welfare. Welfare is the problem. Dependence on government is the problem. More freedom and more responsibility is the solution, not banning shit. That applies to guns, that applies to video games, that applies to porn. Let the people who can be responsible do whatever they want. It's their life. It's their meat. Now, if they infringe on other people's rights or if they cost people money, then it becomes everybody's problem. But you deal with those people individually. You don't ban it for everyone. And then if you choose to ban it for everyone, don't be surprised when people use those same tools and ban your thing in the name of, they may not call it degeneracy, but they'll still ban it using the exact same rationale. And you'll be like, oh no, you can't ban it because, when they try to ban, they try to ban their talk about fucking Nazis and shit. Oh, we don't like you talking about Nazis, that's hate speech. Oh, but free speech. It's the same goddamn thing, you guys. So anyway, that's my problem with absolutists, is their complete fixation on degeneracy, their misunderstanding of freedom, their censorious bullshit where they want to ban shit because they don't like it, and it's just annoying. And at the end of the day, here's the thing. Individualists, at least me, I won't speak for all individualists, but for me personally, I am more than willing to work with absolutists to defeat the communists. But the absolutists,
as long as facing a common enemy, I'm all game. The second try to push any value or rules upon from their society, then the alliance is off.
Right, and the thing is whenever I offer an olive branch, they immediately launch into their shit. They will not accept an alliance unless you convert to them. You have
total submission and conformity.
Yeah, you have to conform to their shit and become like them. Otherwise, you're just like them, and they'll attack you first. So it's hey, idiot, we have a common enemy over there. You don't want to die, right? I don't want to die. Let's defeat the enemy. We can hate each other tomorrow. And they're like, no, you're a degenerate. You fuck dolls. You're blah, blah, blah. It's
Oh, and also, I believe one of the reasons why on the internet or the platform, they focus on attacking the libertarians instead of the left. Well, because the libertarians are small in number and acceptable targets to attack without getting deplatformed.
I'm pretty sure that's it. They need to talk about something, but they can't attack the left or they'll get deplatformed. So attacking libertarians is the new edgy. It's kind of like how you used to have these these Gamergate channels that attacked feminism, but then when they started getting demonetized for attacking feminism, they switched to attacking like crunch time at video game companies because that was less controversial than attacking the SJW infiltration of the game industry. So it's just like, whatever, man. Look, the offer still stands. Fuck the communists. I'm willing to work with you, but you need to fucking drop all this shit. You don't have to understand freedom. You don't have to agree with freedom. But I just ask that you respect freedom. And we can work together. And here's the thing. Individualists can live side by side with absolutists. You can have, here's the thing, what's fucking crazy. In this live stream, they were talking about how the government created all these hate speech laws and whatnot. And since the government created these laws, we need the government to fix these laws. But the Amish are living the absolutist dream. They have their own community. It's super conservative, super traditional, super patriarchal. They're exempt from Social Security taxes. They have their own homogenous, ethnically pure, whatever. They have everything you want in America with the communists and the progressives and everything going on in America. They're doing it within the system by isolating themselves and just doing it. The Amish don't need to take over Washington to change the laws to do it. They just did it. So it's like, you could do that right now. If you want to have your little Catholic or whatever, do it. Nobody's stopping you. I call it a cultural no-go zone. You could start those today. They have these in Brazil, in Argentina. There are German no-goes, they're cultural zones. They don't even have to be no-go zones. The government tolerates them and likes them because they create jobs. So they don't even need to do anything violent. But there's German cultural communities in Brazil. There are Confederate cultural communities in Brazil. Basically, Confederates after the Civil War fled to Brazil and created little towns where they celebrate Southern Confederate culture in Brazil. And no one gives a shit.
Good to see you, kid.
So do it. You don't need to take over the government. And the important thing is you don't need to force your shit on anyone else to do it. You can become like the Amish and create a no-go zone today. And then do whatever you want and live however you want and have your little conservative traditional dream. And that doesn't have to affect anyone else. You can have an Amish community next to Las Vegas and it wouldn't matter. People in Las Vegas would have their sex doll brothels and their fucking Blade Runner shit, and then you could have your little Amish farm. There'd be no problem. We can absolutely live side by side if you're willing to tolerate us. Because that's the big problem. The problem is the individuals are totally live and let live. It's actually kind of like the weakness of individualism, because absolutists and communists absolutely do not tolerate anyone else but them. But individuals are very tolerant, very understanding, very live and let live. And so we don't destroy our enemies the way the other points do, which is kind of a weakness in the long run. Because when the other people get into power, they always purge us. We never purge them when we're in power. So,
right, if we actually kill the preemptive, giving up a really big core.
It's not even that. It's like we don't want to kill anyone because we see the value in group. So, for example,
and also natural selection. Let nature take its course. Suffer your own consequences.
Well, for example, white people are basically farmers. If you look at the farming sector, it's almost entirely white. And then you have Asians in tech, and then you have black people in professional sports, and you have Hispanics and, I don't know, fucking hotel cleaning and lawn maintenance. I don't know. Everybody has their niche. And Indians do, I don't know, convenience stores. Some of them are doctors. Every, different races have their niche, and they're really good at what they do. And there's no reason not to leverage that. Racism simply makes you weaker.
Could you let me catch
up?
So,
you could have a society where everybody's white. Where all the white people do all the jobs. But, I mean, it's been proven that there's certain races that are better at other jobs. So why not leverage those strengths? It makes your society better. It makes everything more efficient and it makes everybody better off if you value people's advantages. So individuals always have the advantage when it comes to innovation, efficiency, wealth creation. Like, there's a reason why people want to live in societies that value freedom. It's just that not everybody likes it, but you can live in a society that values freedom and have your own little community within that society. The Amish live within America, and no matter what happens, I don't see anybody fucking with the Amish. Even if America goes full communist, I don't see, like, anyone, because the Amish don't do anything. They're not a threat to anyone. Like, you could do that. Like, again, you have communities in Brazil that are made up of former Nazis and Confederates, and the government's totally fine with them. And they live their little culture, and they have their little communities, and everybody loves them. They're like touristy. Like, hey, you want to go to a little German town? And it's like, imagine living in South America and being able to go into a community that's like a little slice of Germany. Isn't that cool? Doesn't it sound interesting? Don't you want to visit and see what it's like? Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, that's... I know I'm behind on all my donations.
Okay, so do you want to do all the donations before we do Skype calls, or do you think we'll leave
time? I got donations always take a priority. So
Okay,
let me check my. Go ahead.
Okay.
There's
So
two
while
on.
go ahead, Karan.
So go on, sure.
Okay,
You go first.
All right. So while you're doing the donations, I'm going to start some rigaways. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
While you're doing the donations, I'll be back in like 10 minutes.
All right.
So the game I'm going to be giving away is I'm going to give away 5 copies of Red Faction. Because
Okay.
Red Faction is all about fighting for freedom, and that is
Nice.
that is what we should be about. So I'm giving that in honor of 4th of July. So I'll get that started in just a moment.
Nice.
All right.
Look it up, Shogun. Don't even deny it anymore.
All right. Mugo Minion says, "Do you even Zerg bra?" So I've actually made this point. So like, if you look at the Starcraft, which are actually Warhammer 40k races, like the Zerg or the Tyranids, and the Space Marines are obviously the Imperium or the Space Marines, and then the Protoss or the Eldar. But let's use Starcraft because more people know about that. If you look at like the political trichotomy in the Starcraft races, essentially the Zerg are the communists. They always have popular support of the common person, so individually they're very weak, but they have numbers on their side. That's communism's strength. So they're like the Zerg, and the Protoss are like the individualists. They're small in number, but they're individually probably smarter and better than any other individual. They have like the elites on their side, and they also have money and they have technology, but they're relatively small in number. So they have to leverage their technology to have any kind of hope. And then the Space Marines would be like the absolutists. They're very militaristic, very xenophobic, very ethnocentric, and that's about it. And they make a lot of enemies. Like they get along with nobody. Just like humanity in Warhammer 40k or StarCraft. And they also fight among themselves. Notice, like, the Protoss don't really fight among themselves. The Zergs certainly don't fight among themselves. But the humans in StarCraft are always, like, killing each other due to, like, little petty squabbles and whatnot. And if you look at, like, Europe, it was this endless war. People who were basically cousins going to war against each other. They spoke the same language, worshipped the same gods, had the same skin tone, and just killed each other endlessly because that's what happens. All right. Anyway, they never talk about social media addiction. Yeah, I mean, that's again, what is an addiction? An addiction is whatever is negative to your life. So if you spend all day on social media and you're neglecting things and it's negatively affecting your life, then you have an addiction. So do something about it. I mean, like, what are you going to ban social media? Oh, we got to ban everything. Like, everyone needs to get off their smartphone after 2 hours a day. Like, everyone will tell you to go eat a dick. And sure, are there people who have an addiction to social media? Sure. So, again, what do you do? How do you solve this problem? It's very simple. Again, you can force people to do the right thing. You can ban social media, or you can somehow put like limits on how much social media people can do. Like they can only check Twitter once an hour or some bullshit. Like you could do all kinds of weird shit to restrict people from accessing social media. But people are just going to go around it. Like if you tell them they can only access social media from this account once an hour, they'll just create multiple accounts. I saw this. Look, I personally saw this. I grew up in Section 8 housing. Let me tell you what happened in the 90s. I don't think this happens anymore, but back in the 90s, let me tell you what people used to do. They would buy food with food stamps. And then, because you couldn't buy like electronics or alcohol with food stamps. But that's what they wanted to have. They wanted to have alcohol. So they'd buy the food with the food stamps, and then they would return the food for store credit, and then they would get the alcohol with the store credit. Or they would simply trade the food. Back when they had physical food stamps, they'd trade the physical food stamps for cash, and they'd buy the alcohol with the cash. At the end of the day,
I read about this. They'll even take a little loss, like they'll sell a greater rewards of food stamp to someone for a bit less cash, so they can buy what they want.
So, all you're doing, all these restrictions to try to force them to do the right thing, you're just basically giving them a chore. You're giving them additional hurdles to jump through to get what they want. But they're going to get what they want. If they want alcohol, they're going to find a way to turn that welfare into alcohol, if that's what they want to buy. And no matter what you do, they're going to get the alcohol. They may not get as much alcohol. They may have to take a lot of loss. You may give them additional errands to run, but they're going to get that fucking alcohol whether you like it or not. So how do you solve the problem? Not just feel better about it. How do you solve it? It's very simple. Like if you're addicted, if you're an alcoholic, just don't help them. Don't help people who are alcoholics. Let them suffer the consequence of their actions. Like, I mean, Shogun, you were an alcoholic.
Yes.
What was it that motivated you to put down the booze and become sober?
The fact that my friends and people here were turning away from me because they knew I was destroying myself. I knew that, I mean, because honestly, I didn't care whether I lived or died when I was an alcoholic. But when I saw I was hurting other people in the process, that is when I stopped drinking. That is when I finally reached step 7 of what's called the drunkard's progress. You can look it up on Google if you want.
Okay.
Forsaken by friends. That's what did it.
Or the point is like, but there was no banning. Like banning, and if let's say when you were deep into being an alcoholic, would a ban, if alcohol was banned, would you have just, I don't know, brewed your own, gotten some, and we tried that during Prohibition. The mafia just provided alcohol. So if we tried to ban alcohol, we just create an underground market. Would you have gone to a speakeasy if you lived in the 1930s when you were an alcoholic and just gotten alcohol from the mob?
Well, yep, that's what I would have done. That or I would have made it myself because I found some yeast and I was like, you know what? I can make my own booze and don't have to pay for it. Save me some money. Because I had a friend who was also alcoholic. I mean, he's still battling with it now. He made some booze. It worked pretty well from him.
So, yeah, there you go. So banning doesn't work. At the worst case scenario, you create a black market and you empower the mafia, or you create cartels like what happens in Mexico with the drug cartels. So not only are you not fighting degeneracy, you're creating organized crime. What does work is just letting people suffer the natural Imagine a world where drugs were legal, but there was no welfare. Would there be drug cartels in Mexico? No. I promise you there wouldn't be. If drugs were legal, there'd be no drug cartels. So all the kidnappings and murders that happen in Mexico and in America from the cartels wouldn't happen. There'd be no MS-13. In replacement for that, the people who did fuck their lives up with drugs would die, or they'd hit their rock bottom and get clean. But as a whole, I promise you, just like we learned with Prohibition, like the cost was not, like banning alcohol didn't solve anything and it created more problems. That's what always happens. So like the freedom way, the responsibility way, the way of nature and natural selection has a proven track record millennia long. Meanwhile, prohibition and banning and degeneracy and all that shit doesn't work. It just creates more problems. Alright, okay, that's the end of the D-Live. Let me check entropy. Oh shit, we got lots of entropy totals. Alright, random curiosity for $3.
We've got an infected juggernaut here.
Okay, go ahead. Alright. Go ahead.
Okay, so it's a Lawrence, Imp Seal, Ave Seal, or Av Seal, I don't know how you prefer to pronounce it, Diana McFarlane, and D. Now, I forgot to mention this before, but you have to add me on Steam so that I can give you the game.
Alright,
I don't have codes.
You can work that out on PMs.
Yeah, that right. That's why I was just mentioning this because I don't have code. It's like I normally do.
All right, cool. All right, random curiosity for $3. Why do you think people are bothered by mortality being subjective? Or you said mortality, I think morality being subjective and hearing that praying is pointless since it doesn't solve anything. Well, the answer is always the same. So, thinking about subjective morality and stuff like that, it adds a lot of uncertainty. So let's talk about where religion comes from. So we live in a chaotic, random universe where shit just happens we have no control over and can't anticipate. And that is terrifying. It is like, imagine living in a primitive culture where plagues would just happen, like ancient Rome with the Antonine Plague. So a fucking smallpox epidemic just rips through and kills like a third of your population. That's terrifying. And I mean, it's like ancient Rome. You don't have any fucking concept of antibiotics or anything. Like, people would just die. People would get diseases and plagues would happen all the goddamn time. Now, because you don't have a concept of science or medicine, but you want to feel like you have some control over it. So here's the deal. You ascribe these things, these random things that happen that you have no control over, you ascribe them to some supernatural force. And you create rituals that allow you to appease the spirits to stop the plague.
No.
So, plagues just happen, but they burn themselves out. So, but instead of just accepting that plagues happen, there's nothing you can do about it, and just living every day like it's a gift, you create like a religion where you think like the fucking, you gotta pray to Nurgle, and you gotta sacrifice an Imperial Guard to pop a Nurgle to stop the plague, and your prayers and your sacrifices don't do anything, but they give you they make you feel better. They give you a false sense of control over a universe that you don't control. They've actually, they've proven this. There was they did an experiment with birds. I don't remember the breed of bird. They put a random button in a bird's cage, and when the bird hit the button, sometimes food would come out, and sometimes nothing would happen. It was totally random. And over time, they observed that these birds would create rituals, because the birds would notice that sometimes they hit the button and it worked. And even though it was random, they had no way of knowing that. So they ascribed whatever they were doing as making the button work. So one bird would like walk in a circle, and one bird would do like a little dance before it hit the button, because one time it did the dance and hit the button and the button worked. So it thought that doing the dance made the button work. And these are birds. So that's where religion comes from. Hey. It's a way for, basically, we're dealing with a random, chaotic universe that we can't control, and creating rituals and creating beliefs, things like prayer, sacrifice, rituals, they give us a false sense of control. They make us feel better. They make us feel like we're in control of the universe. So when a disease breaks out with no cure, we can pray. And if we live good lives, we don't sin, we pray to Jesus, then Jesus won't let the plague kill us and our family. Now, in reality, you know, like, and this happens all the time. So let's say you're a devout Christian and your family dies of the plague. Well, does that mean that God doesn't exist? No, that means God's testing you. So it's all fucking unfalsifiable. So if God answers your prayers, God is just and good, and God answers prayers. If God doesn't answer your prayer, God's testing your faith. No matter what happens, God's existence is never questioned, because the whole point is to create this illusion of control. And that's why when you confront people with the reality that prayer does nothing, and that all these beliefs, these objective beliefs, they're all just comforting myths that let people feel like they have some kind of handle on the world that they don't. And when you threaten that, the reason why they take it so personally and they get so fucking butthurt is because you're literally disrupting the foundation of their well-being. You're calling into question the things that make them feel safe in this chaotic, random world.
Okay.
And, you know, the long story short of it is they're not strong enough to handle that. So they'd rather live in a make-believe world where they can play pretend in a world that makes sense to them than live in the real world where they have no control because they just can't handle that. It's terrifying.
Oh no, I'm not letting you die.
I'll flame here for $3. Is absolutism and collectivism dominating individualism part of natural selection? So in nature, the strong and the fit naturally dominate. However, the weak and unfit often collectivize to dominate the strong and the fit. This literally happens in chimpanzees. There's a interesting, you could watch a TED talk about alpha males in chimpanzees.
give it a shot.
I know a thing or two about chimpanzees, by the way, but let me tell you a little something about like the hierarchies in chimpanzee troops. So usually, all things being equal, the strongest, fittest male will lead the troop. However, in some cases, the second and third strongest males will team up, and they'll decide who gets to be the alpha, and the strongest male, the individually strongest male, will have to basically submit to the weaker male because he can't take on both of them at once. Once you understand that, you understand the nature of collectivism. Collectivism is a way for weaker people to dominate stronger people through numbers. And it doesn't have to be like, majority rule. It could just be like a small number of elites dominating the strongest elite. You see this all the time, and there's nothing wrong with it per se. In fact, the way you get around this is by its politics. So if you're the strongest and fittest and you take care of people and they know that like you have their back, they'll allow you to be the alpha. But if you're like a domineering asshole, they'll team up. Even though they can't take you one-on-one, like you'll beat their fucking ass one-on-one, they might team up against you to keep you from leading the troop. And then they'll force your submission. And even though you're individually stronger than any one of them, they can collectively kick your ass because they outnumber you. Now, again, this is nature. This is chimpanzees. This isn't Machiavelli. This is nature. So that's the nature of collectivism. Does collectivism dominate individualism? It can. But in nature, all things being equal, individualists are usually the strongest and the fittest. The key is, like as Machiavelli says, like, is it better to be loved or feared? Well, obviously a leader ideally would want to be loved, but being loved doesn't protect you when times are bad, but being feared does. So be loved, but also be ruthless when you're fucked with. Like, take care of people, be merciful and loving and all that, but then when someone's fucked with you, fucking push their shit in all the way. And send a message that, like, don't mistake my kindness for weakness. I will fuck your shit up. And then people will respect you. Respect is honestly bred from fear. Not terror, but a healthy fear. Like the way you respected your parents. Why? Because your parents could spank you. They could cause physical pain, and they were bigger and stronger than you. Now, they didn't have to do that all the time, but if they were taking care of you, if they were taking care of your needs and you knew they loved you, you would behave. Because you'd have a healthy fear of what they could do to you, but you'd also understand that they care about you. And that's what breeds a healthy relationship between a parent and a child. If you take away that fear, sorry, I hit my pop filter. If you take away that fear and the child's no longer afraid of their parent at all, they know the parent won't ever spank them, you get spoiled, rotten piece of shit kids. Damn, really? Not because the parent doesn't love the kid. The parent does love the kid, obviously. But without that fear, you don't have a healthy relationship. So, anyway, I kind of went on a few tangents, but there's nothing about collectivism or absolutism dominating individualism in nature per se. It's more on a case-by-case basis. If an individual plays their cards right, and the collective understands that, hey, like, for example, you see this with, like, the emperors in Rome, like Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was a fantastic general and extremely charismatic, and the people loved him. But he also took care of the people. Alexander the Great was another example. There's actually a really good speech from Alexander the Great, where when his army was trying to return to Greece, he was basically shaming them for like all the shit that they did together and how he's taking care of them and how he's basically been fighting on the front lines next to them, and now they're gonna like go back to Greece instead of staying with him. And so like the point is like people will follow an individualist if the individualist is basically taking care of them. But if you have like a complete autocratic asshole that only thinks about himself, then the collective will whatever. So again, the key is individualism has no problem with people with different beliefs. There's room for everyone. In fact, diversity can be a strength. It's just a matter of how you leverage it. Like, individuals don't try to convert people to individualism. We don't need everyone to agree with us. We just need to, like, work together. And we don't have to agree on everything, but we have to basically tolerate each other. And then everyone gets along, or at least we get along. You may hate us and call us degenerate, but, you know, that's a you problem. All right, Lord Ines for $3. I know a vegetarian from school who is morbidly obese who eats whole pots full of spinach for lunch and grazes on bags of vegetables all day. He wonders why he's fat. You can get fat off plants. Well, so yes, it's all about calories. So if you eat entire fucking troughs of plants, of course you can get fat. Like, have you seen cows? Cows are herbivores, and they're, you know, they got big old bellies. So yes, herbivores can be fat. It's all about how many calories you eat. Now, generally, vegetables, you know, especially leafy greens, they tend to be very low in calorie, and your stomach can only fit so much. So, like, if you're eating all this salad and all these vegetables, but you're eating so much of it, the problem isn't the food you're eating. The problem is the amount of food you're eating. So what would probably help that individual is getting, like, bariatric surgery, shrinking the size of their stomach, getting a lap band, getting some type of thing, so they just eat less, and then the pounds would just fall off. But they probably stretch their stomach out so much, and again, they have no willpower. There are some people who, when they feel the least bit hungry, they can't not eat. The only way to keep them from eating is if there's no food. Like, they have to go to, like, those fat camps. Or, you know that show Biggest Loser? Where they have, like, fat people, and they have, like, personal trainers yelling at them 24/7 and making them exercise. And the amount of weight they lose is staggering. They have these amazing transformations. But then the people who get voted off the show, who go back home, they gain the weight back. They check in on them, like, 6 weeks later, and they're all fat again. Because they have no self-control.
Wants to talk to you.
So the only way to, honestly, and the way bariatric surgery works is if you eat too much, you throw it up. Your stomach literally runs out of room. So that's somehow, if that's what you need, that's what you need. If you need to throw your food up when you eat too much, the only way you're going to lose weight, so be it. All right, waifu works for $3. The Zerg weren't always commies. They're originally extreme capitalists, individual Zergs rising to power, then a commie queen took power. I don't think that's true. I'm pretty sure that Zerg were biologically engineered by the Xel'Naga to be a hive mind, to be like the perfect organism.
Yeah, they literally cannot disobey the mind of whoever's in charge of each swarm brood.
Yep. And I actually think this is my own, not conspiracy theory, this is my Warhammer theory. I think that the Tyranid hive mind is a Catan, which is one of the star-eating, you know, gods who fought in the war in heaven with the Necrons. Because, like, basically, think about it. Like, they're anti-warp. They have, like, they can block out warp. And the old ones, not the elder ones. I was thinking, like, Lovecraft. The old ones who created, like, the orcs and everything, they fought using warp technology, which is why the Necrons have, like, the obelisks and everything. But the Tyranids are, like, anti-warp. And they also, like, basically, my hunch is that the Catan created the Tyranids to basically wipe out the old ones and all their creations. So that's why they're so powerful against warp entities and why they just consume everything. So probably a Catan that escaped the galaxy created the Tyranids and brought them to the galaxy. That's my just random Warhammer theory. Now return to our regularly scheduled programming. All right, one more. Zach7089 for $3. TFM Kuroi, American companies are becoming more dominant in Japanese manga anime censorship. It's getting bad enough that Japanese artists just got their government involved to protect freedom. Agree? Yeah, well, so, yeah, that's fine. Now, the thing is if your company is, like, taking investor money and the investors are making demands, yeah, that's what investors do. Like, so let's say you go on Shark Tank and you have a business idea and one of the guys like, okay, I will fund your company for 70% ownership in your company. and you say yes. Well, now that venture capitalist essentially owns your company because he owns 70%, which means you're now his silent partner. You have no say in the management of that company. They can do whatever they want.
It's really an honor to meet you.
You have a 30% stake, but it's not a majority, so now he makes the decisions, not you. So if you take the money, you take the money. And so a lot of these anime companies, these studios, these Western companies offer them money, and they take the money, and then the Western companies start dictating to them. Well, don't take the money. Like, this is what I understand. Like, you know how EA, they buy up studios and cannibalize them and then destroy the IP and then bury everything? It's like they're known for that. They're known for buying up studios, cannibalizing them, and destroying the IP. So let's say you own a studio and EA offers you a bunch of money. Just say no. If you give a shit about your IP and your studio, don't sell it to EA. It's that easy. It's not hard. But if you sell it to EA, yes, they're going to cannibalize your studio, they're going to fire everyone, and they're going to destroy your IP. That's what EA does. However, here's the ultimate question.
We'll have to make some
Should the government prevent individuals from taking the money if they want? Like, if I own that anime studio and some Western company is offering me a huge amount of money, and it's my studio, should I not have the right to take that money? Now, like, again, should I have the right to sell my studio to EA? I know they're going to cannibalize it. I know they're going to fire everyone. I know they're going to destroy my IP. But they're offering me, like, $500 million. You know, like, I'll basically be set for life. I'll never have to work again. If it's my company and I created it and I built it and I own it, do I have the right to sell it to EA knowing they'll destroy it? If the answer is no, why? Why should it's my company. I should be able to sell it to whoever I want. Now you'd be like, oh, but you know, the people, they deserve a say in it, but it's not their company. And if they're part owners, like let's say they're 50% owners, let's say I have a 51% stake, and my employees have a 49% stake, and I just outvote them. Well, when the EA check comes in, they're all retired too. All of us got a huge payday. Sure, the studio's fucked and the IP is fucked, but we're all retired. We can just fucking start a new company and make a new IP. Who cares? Like, and that's a lot of these people do. They sell their studio to EA and then they go start a new studio with the seed money from selling it to EA, and then they like live in a mansion. So if you think that should be illegal, I mean, honestly, I don't think so. I think it should be, if people want to sell it, they can sell it. I think there needs to be transparency, and I think before you take the money, think about it like a recording art, like a rapper or a rock band, you know, like some sleazy studio signs them and basically exploits them and makes them work for shit, and then the studio makes all the money. The problem there isn't that, like, they voluntarily did it, but they didn't either read the fine print or they just took the money without thinking. They weren't responsible. But if they're adults and they make poor choices regarding their businesses, should we ban that, or should we just let people suffer the consequences? So every time a rock group or an athlete gets exploited by an agent or a studio, the reputation gets spread that you should do your fucking homework and hire a lawyer to make sure you don't do something stupid. And then people start acting smarter, and they hire talented agents and they hire lawyers to help them understand these documents they're signing so they don't get taken advantage of. So solving the problem is simply letting people suffer the consequences. So, for example, anime studios that got into bed with Sony or American companies that are turning them into bullshit, they're mad, they're angry. But I guarantee the next time a Western studio goes in to buy an anime studio, the anime studio is going to be like, we want it in writing that you can't tell us to censor shit, and you can't make us do this, and you can't make us do that. And if you agree, if you put it in writing that you leave us alone to do what we want, and you just enjoy the profits, we'll sign. If you tell us that no,
already wising up to that.
Right. So you don't. Right. So you don't need to pass a law. You just use, it's like once bitten, twice shy. So now that Western companies are doing their bullshit, but also don't sell to EA. That's really the moral of the story, is when EA waves money in your face, don't take it. And if you do take it, if you work at the studio after it gets sold to EA, dust off the old resume because you're about to get fired.